Что ты делаешь? It's right here.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead and welcome you all to the December 8th regular board meeting of Everett Public Schools Board of Directors. Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I couldn't hear anyone on that. Is everything set up? Okay.
I just mute myself.
Okay. Great. And I believe Director Nichols is going to offer our land acknowledgement this evening. Director Nichols?
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish, Snohomish, and Tulalip peoples. We express our deepest respect and gratitude to the ancestors of this land on whose shoulders we stand. In Everett Public Schools, we strive to create equitable outcomes and build a culture of inclusive belonging for all students, teachers, staff, and community.
Thank you. And will the secretary please call the roll?
President Mason,
Present.
Vice President Lassane, Director Berg,
Present.
Director Mitchell,
Present.
Director Nichols.
Present.
Thank you. As always, our first item of business tonight is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Salzman, may you please provide an overview of tonight's agenda?
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and to the public and to all our youngsters out there. Tonight's agenda contains the following: the annual organizational meeting, a segment for student recognition, the superintendent's report, a segment for board comments, a segment for public comments, a segment for routine business nature, a segment for strategic progress monitoring, a segment for information discussion, a segment for unfinished business, and upcoming agenda items. Since publishing the agenda, the following change has been made. Item 7.01, recognition of students' progress in iReady, a school name was corrected. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as is. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move forward with the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say no. The agenda is adopted. That takes us to a special section of our meeting tonight, which is our annual organization. Per policy 1120 annual organization meeting, the board provides that the board shall elect at the first regular meeting in December from among the members to represent president, vice president, parliamentarian, and for a 2-year term, a legislative rep. So tonight we will begin with the election of board president. And this 6.01 election of board president, this agenda item is for the election of board president. It is for a 1-year term. At this time, I hereby open nominations for the position of president.
I would like to nominate Caroline Mason to remain as president.
Second.
Are there any additional nominations? Hearing none, the nominations for president are closed. Would the recording secretary please proceed with a roll call vote?
Director Berg.
I affirm.
I think you have to say, like you say her name.
Oh, I affirm Caroline Mason as our next board president.
Thank you. Director Lasane,
Affirm Caroline Mason as our next president.
Director Mason,
The ever awkward Caroline Mason.
Director Mitchell,
Caroline Mason.
Director Nichols.
I affirm Caroline Mason.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank my fellow board members for their confidence in one more year. And I'm pleased to and honored to be able to do this. So at this point, Director Mason was elected to the position of board president by a unanimous vote. That takes us to item 6.02, election of board vice president. And at this time, I would like to open the nominations for board vice president.
I nominate Pam Lissens as board vice president.
I'll second.
Are there any additional nominations for board vice president? Hearing none, the nominations for vice president are closed. And would the recording secretary please proceed with a roll call vote?
Director Berg,
I affirm Pam Mason, or Pam Lissens as board vice president.
Director Lasane,
Very awkward, but I would also nominate Pam Lissane.
Director Mitchell,
Pamela Sane.
Director Mason,
Pam Lissane.
Director Nichols.
Pam Lissane.
Okay. It looks like Director Lissane was elected to the position of board vice president for another year. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor. Thank you.
At this time, we will move to section 6.03, which is election of board legislative representative. This agenda item is for the election of board legislative representative. It is for a 2-year term. At this time, I hereby open nominations for the position of legislative representative. Are there any nominations?
Madam Chair, I would like to nominate our Director Andrew Nichols for legislative representative.
I'll second that. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, the nominations for legislative representative are closed, and I will have the recording secretary please proceed with a roll call vote.
Director Berg,
I affirm Andrew Nichols as legislative rep for the board.
Director Lasane,
Andrew Nichols for legislative rep.
Director Mason,
Andrew Nichols as legislative rep.
Director Mitchell,
Andrew. Sorry, Andrew Nichols.
Director Nichols.
I affirm.
You actually, I believe, have to do a roll call vote by name.
Okay.
We're putting you on the
Andrew
spot,
Nichols,
that
yeah.
horribly awkward moment. that we all have to
Can I
go
just
through.
vote present?
Okay. Director Andrew Nichols was elected to the position of legislative representative by a unanimous vote. Congratulations. And lastly, we have section 6.04, which is the election of board parliamentarian. This agenda item is for election of board parliamentarian. It is for a 1-year term. At this time, I hereby open nominations for the position of parliamentarian.
I nominate Tracy Mitchell for board parliamentarian.
I second. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I will have the recording secretary please proceed with a roll call vote.
Director Berg,
I affirm Tracy Mitchell as board parliamentarian.
Director Lasane,
C. Mitchell for board parliamentarian.
Director Mason,
Tracy Mitchell for Board Parliamentarian.
Tracy Mitchell, Director Mitchell.
Can I just say Tracy Mitchell?
Director Nichols.
Tracy Mitchell.
Okay, thank you. Director Tracy Mitchell was elected to the position of parliamentarian by a unanimous vote. Congratulations. Okay, with that behind us, we get to move on with our recognition this evening, and I am so excited to have with us some of our top students in the district tonight. These are our exceptional, overachieving, iReady students, and I believe we are honoring tonight the top student from each elementary school that participates in iReady, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sally Lancaster.
All right, thank you very much. I am so excited we're here tonight to celebrate the academic success of our students and recognize their progress in iReady because we know they've been working hard and that success comes from hard work. And I did want to mention to all of the students, your administrators are here. Some of them aren't visible because there's too many people on here, but your administrators are here cheering on your success too. So our good friends at Curriculum Associates arranged for a very special guest to help us with our presentation tonight. So I'm wondering if our buddy Plory could make him or herself known. So Plory, are you out there? Plory, are you there? Let's see, I think I see Plory. I think we're gonna try to get Plory spotlighted, just cheering for us. Now, a lot of adults don't know who Plory is, but if you look at the smiles of some of our students, you'll know that Plory is one of our friends that helps us through the iReady learning materials. So we're very excited that Plory is here to cheer on our students today. So we're going to start with the Central Region schools, and I'll announce our iReady honorees with Central Region. And so I'm going to start with Jasper Gates from Emerson Elementary. So Jasper Gates. Jasper has passed 61 lessons in English language arts and 109 math lessons for a total of 170 passed lessons so far this year. So that's fantastic. Congratulations, Jasper. Our next person we're highlighting is Matthew Bredekin from Jefferson Elementary. Matthew has had more than a year's growth in numbers and operations. He's had growth in reading and math domains for both high usage and passing rates in both areas. So congratulations, Matthew. And next we have Terry-Anna Ruby Jewel Brown. So Terry-Anna is from Madison Elementary. She has the highest number of math lessons passed at Madison with a total of 107 to date. She has the highest growth within the math domain of numbers and operations, and she has made more than a year's growth in that area. So congratulations, Terry-Anna. Next, we have Skylar Rowe from Monroe Elementary. And Skylar has had more than a year's growth in numbers and operations at math. And the same thing, has done more than a year's growth in reading as well. So congratulations, Skylar. And then we have from Penny Creek Elementary, we have Ian Rodriguez Brenner. Ian has passed all of the lessons taken so far this year. And again, in just a few short months, Ian, you have over a year's growth in your reading comprehension. And your principal said you're a very hard worker. So congratulations to you. And then finally, for the Central Region, we have Marlene Yap from Silver Lake Elementary. Marlene is a dedicated, hardworking student who has been recognized as one of the iReady champions and has passed all but one of her math tests and 21 reading tests. So fantastic job, Marlene. The Silver Lake staff are very, very proud of you, and Plory is as well. So congratulations to all the students from the Central Region. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jeannie Willard, who will share the Central or the North Region winner.
Thank you, Dr. Lancaster. Those were very exciting. I am Jeannie Willard. I'm the Regional Superintendent for the North Region. And I'm also really excited to recognize and celebrate students from our schools who show outstanding iReady growth. And I wanted to mention one other thing. We mostly have elementary schools here tonight, but in the North Region, we also have it at one of our middle schools. So I will be able to recognize that student as well. So I'm really excited about that. So first up is Andrea Harmon from Garfield Elementary School. Andrea, I should correct myself, hey, has completed 7 iReady lessons in September, 26 in October, this is outstanding, and 32 in November, and she is passing her lessons at 100%. She has stuck with it and worked hard to achieve much growth in math. Excellent job. Congratulations. Next up, I'd like to celebrate Ronaldo Ceja Tolosa from Hawthorne Elementary School. Ronaldo has made impressive growth in iReady this year in reading. He has made steady increases in the amount of time he participated from September through November. This is wonderful, while also making increases in the percentage of lessons he has passed. He went from passing only 50% to 86% in November. He spent an average of 42 minutes practicing and reading and increased to an average of 174. Wow, and by November. Ronaldo, congratulations, great work. It is great to see and meet you also. Next up, I'd like to celebrate Nicanor Staley Avila from Jackson Elementary School. A 5th grade iReady All-Star, Nicanor has already passed a whopping 93 lessons in iReady math and reading over a total of 31 hours of online instruction. So far this year, Nicanor has worked on reading lessons for 12 hours and passed 46 out of 51. And then almost as many in math as well, and almost 19 hours. Congratulations, Nicanor. Next up, I've got to get my notes in order here. Vincent Cabrera from Lowell Elementary School. Great to see you tonight. Vincent has shown tremendous growth in his academic ability. For the 2019-20 school year, Vincent spent a total of 19 hours on iReady Math and completed 62 lessons with a 90% passing rate. This year, only 3 months in, Vincent has already spent 20 hours on iReady, completed 52 lessons, and has a 93% passing rate. It's so impressive. That's outstanding. I would like to invite Dr. Woods, who's also on the Zoom. This is great. And she's going to translate that into Spanish for me.
Buenas noches. Vincent ha mostrado un tremendo crecimiento en su capacidad académica. Para el año escolar 2019-20, Vincent dedicó un total de 19 horas con iReady Matemáticas. Completó 62 lecciones con una tasa de aprobación del 90%.
This is so nice.
Este año, después de solo 3 meses, Vincent ya pasó 20 horas en iReady, completó 52 lecciones y ha aprobado sus lecciones con una tasa de aprobación de 93%. Tan impresionante. Felicitaciones.
Felicidades, Vincent. Completo, Vincent.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. Next up, I'd like to celebrate Juniper Rogers from View Ridge Elementary School. Yay! Juniper has made impressive growth on both the math and reading iReady diagnostics. From fall 2019, she's grown almost 2 grade levels into this fall. That's outstanding work. Great work, Juniper. Next, I'd like to celebrate Lindsay Garcia Hernandez from Whittier Elementary School. Great to see you. Lindsay has committed almost 14 hours to her personalized instruction in both iReady reading and math, and has already made almost 1 year growth in reading comprehension. Lindsay is dedicated to learning with a strong desire to improve every day. Amazing work. I'd like to invite Dr. Woods one more time, please, if you don't mind. Could you translate what I just shared?
Sure. Okay. Buenas tardes. Lindsay ha dedicado casi 14 horas a su instrucción personalizada con iReady, tanto en la lectura como en las matemáticas, y ha avanzado casi un año en la comprensión de lectura en solamente 3 meses. Lindsay se dedica a aprender con un fuerte deseo de mejorarse cada día. Felicitaciones.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up, I'd like to celebrate Amir Hussein Nazir Zanouzi, our Evergreen Middle School student. Nice to see you. Nice to have your family there too. Grade 6. Oh, you're so welcome. Grade 6 iReady Reading Champion, Amir Hussein has completed 79 lessons. I can't even say that, with 32.5 hours. Utilizing the program to practice your reading skills. You've been a rock star at Evergreen and a real standout student. Great job. Oh, you're so welcome. And last but not least, from the North region, Natalie Lopez. You're up for a celebration. You're from our Port Gardner program. And I don't know if we get to see you or if you're here with us. Natalie is a 3rd grader in Port Gardner's program. She's an iReady rock star. She's passed 100% of her lessons so far, 14 out of 14. There's Plory, and is meeting her goal of 45 minutes per week for iReady Math. Congratulations, Natalie. And with that, I wrapped up the North region. I want to hand it over to Mr. Larry Fleckenstein, who's going to share the South region.
All right, thank you, Dr. Willard. And Plory, you need to shake those pom-poms even more right now, because we're going to be recognizing our 6 elementary schools in the South region and those students for their iReady growth. And to start off with, at Cedarwood Elementary School in 5th grade, I'd like to celebrate Gabriel Mora. Gabriel, are you with us tonight? There you are. Gabriel has made significant progress in the numbers and operations domain in mathematics and nearly a year's growth so far, while completing his lessons with 91% accuracy. That's a fantastic job, Gabriel. Can you wave for me? There you go. Okay, you can do it. Anyway, Gabriel, thank you so much for everything that you're putting into school this year, and congratulations on your hard work. And then next, I would like to recognize Caleb Claytor, who's at Forest View Elementary School. He is a 4th grader. Caleb, thanks for joining us tonight. Caleb's been hard at work this year and is progressing well in his grade level range after 6 weeks of consistent work. Caleb has nearly met his iReady stretch goal already for the semester with 7 weeks to go. That's an amazing amount of growth in just a short amount of time. So Caleb, nice job and keep up the hard work. Next, I'd like to recognize from Mill Creek Elementary School in 4th grade, 2 twin brothers. Both are with us, I hope, this evening. That's Cruz and Sebastian Christ. Cruz passed the most iReady lessons in reading in 4th grade this November with 32 lessons passed, while Sebastian passed the most iReady lessons in math in 4th grade during the month of November with 21 lessons. Well done, Cruz and Sebastian, and thanks for your efforts. Next up, I'd like to recognize Arpita Saraya from Silver Firs in 2nd grade. There she is. So good to see you. Arpita has been working hard and been very focused in class this year, and it has paid off by completing and passing 81 iReady lessons so far this year. That is astounding. Congratulations, and thank you for working so hard at school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, next, I would like to recognize Zach Shatner from Tambar Creek Elementary in 3rd grade. And there he is, Zach, I can see you. Zach has made tremendous progress in both reading and math this year. His iReady growth in phonics, vocabulary, and comprehension has been significant this year, and your teacher shared with me that she's super impressed. So thank you so much, Zach, for your hard work. And Mom and Dad, thanks for being with them. I really appreciate seeing you here too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then finally, from Woodside Elementary, I'd like to recognize Zane Russell Peters in 4th grade. There's Zane. Zane, wave. There you go, my man. In 2.5 months, Zane has made almost 1 year of growth in number of and operations and in algebraic thinking, and more than 1 year's growth in geometry using iReady so far this year. That's an amazing amount of growth. Zane, congratulations. And thank you to all of our South Region families for being with us this evening and for sharing your students with us each and every day. Dr. Lancaster?
Well, I want to thank all of our wonderful parents and students for being with us tonight. But before you leave, we would love to get a picture. We like to take pictures with our students and our school board members. So we're going to do this in 2 steps today. The first step, we'd like just the students and the school board members. And to make this work, we need everyone else to mute their video except for the students and the school board members. So if everyone else could mute their video, and then Dr. Catherine Matthews, who is our iReady expert, she's going to be our event photographer today. So go ahead and mute your video, everyone, and get everyone on the gallery view. And we'll get everyone put in there together, and we're going to give Dr. Matthews a minute to arrange her screen. And will you tell us when you're ready, Dr. Matthews, so everyone can smile?
Yes, just give me a moment because there's a lot of folks here.
We think we can do this in one shot. So we're going to have Dr. Saltzman and Plory, you can be in this shot too. We think we can fit everyone into one shot, so that's exciting.
Okay, give me just not as seamless as we thought.
I see some great smiles out there getting ready and waiting. And
thank you for your patience. Let's move these guys up here.
Plory, you did a great job of cheering everyone on, so thank you for that.
Oh my goodness, there's lots of them. Everybody, big smiles too. Okay, hold on, let me check page 2. Page 2. Let's see, who am I missing here? I think
Did you get them all?
no, I just need to move a couple people over.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's a little bit harder over Zoom, but I appreciate
Yes.
everyone's patience.
Really?
We want to make sure we get a good picture of this fantastic group of students.
Okay. Well, I think I have everyone. Ah. You might have to do 2 pictures, so hold on just a second. Big smiles. Okay, hold on 1 second. All right, Kathy, I might need to work with you to put those 2 pictures together.
No problem.
All right, thank you very much, students and families. We appreciate all you're doing, and thank you, Plory, for being our special guest. Keep up the great work. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Lancaster, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. On behalf of the board, we are so honored to be able to recognize you for the work that you've done in the district. You truly are some of our top performers, and it was so fun to see all your faces here tonight. So you're welcome to stay, and you're welcome to go have some dinner maybe, or get on iReady, whatever you choose. So we're going to move forward with the meeting now and move on to section 8.0, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Saltzman.
Yes. Wow, I'm still smiling. So I just feel so good.
Big smiles.
Yeah. that was the best. And to our students and our teachers and our parents, congratulations. That was wonderful. What a great way to start the holiday season, just to see those smiling faces. We've had a wonderful few weeks during these challenging times. I want to share the instructional reviews have just been really special and wonderful, and see great learning. And today we had Tambar Creek Elementary School, and just the great things that are happening at Tambar Creek Elementary School, like all our schools, but great engagement and salutes to our staff. And as you saw tonight with iReady, but district-wide in our elementary schools, great learning taking place through iReady. So congratulations to everybody. And the love of reading. I want us to always have the love of reading. And I want to share in our district, we had a wonderful reading event last week. We did a little holiday reading, and we had many people engage with us, but just to read to our students and to give a little joy. That's what I want to think about to all y'all, and to send that message that just a little joy that we can give back to our community. Like tonight you saw these great youngsters, and then just reading to our youngsters last week was such just joy to everybody. So I wish everybody a happy holiday season, different times, continue being safe, and we appreciate you. And we know that 2021 will be different than 2020. Can promise you that, and we'll make it a great year. So blessings and safety to all. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, now we move on to board and student representative comments. And I would like to start with students tonight. We haven't heard from you for a while. So Tara, would you like to begin this evening if you have anything to share?
Yeah, sure. So one thing I want to bring attention to is last week, Dr. Saltzman held a virtual story time that was originally for elementary school students, but then like people got excited enough about it that like even I heard like high schoolers talking about it. So I just thought that was I don't know, it's always heartwarming when there's like a lot of engagement with an online event and people are like excited for it. Even if it's just like a silly thing, I thought that was cool. And also, I know at Jackson, our ASB students are working really hard to start organizing our like winter pep assembly video, some fun things coming with Mr. Bala. And then one thing that I'm doing is a like holiday book exchange where I don't know, I'm trying to set it up so that students will pick a book for an anonymous other student, and then we're gonna have a library pickup day. So you'll have someone who has picked a book out for you and we can read those over winter break. So I'm trying to get like as many people as I can involved in that before tomorrow, so I can start setting up with our librarian. But just some fun holiday activities, trying to wrap up the year and hopefully de-stress a little bit, because I know these last 3 weeks before break are usually pretty stressful for students, and then especially online. So it's good that we have events and stuff to kind of bring that up. And then again, I just want to say like happy holidays to everyone, and I hope everyone has a really safe and hopefully fun break with their family for now. But yeah, hopefully 2021 will be better.
Thank you. I love your idea of the book exchange. That's a fun one. Okay, student representative Hussein.
Hello, good evening. So last week I was able to meet with the WESCO ASB presidents, and we have schools from Oak Harbor, to Everett, to Gateway, and we just really sat down and talked about what are we doing to kind of put a smile on our students' faces. And we had to keep in mind, and we had to remind ourselves that though we are ASB officers and we should provide for this school, we also need to take time and remember that we're humans too, and really just take a breather. And adding on to that, ASB and the rest of the leadership class is having a winter wonderland show at Everett High School, where there will be a bunch of lights and the A building will be lit up, and you could just drive by and basically pick up hot cocoa, of course, COVID style, everyone will be safe, and just meet new people, talk to the principals, and hopefully just have a good time before we enter winter break. So hopefully I'll be able to see you guys all there. And it has taken a lot of planning, so hopefully you guys would be able to stop by.
Okay, give me the date again.
Oh, The date is on the Beak News, but I will give you more information about it. Email.
That would be great. Thank you. I look forward to that. Thank you. Director Nichols, do you have anything to share this evening?
First and foremost, really excited for all our students tonight, and glad they could all be here. I saw Nicanor and his family jump on. I don't know if they were here when we first did the recognition, so I just want to make sure we say hi to them and congratulations. Also very excited to be the legislative rep. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of work to do, and I look forward to doing it all together. And, you know, just echoing what Amina stated, this time of year, whether it's work or school or personal projects, whatever it may be, we're all getting wrapped up, and we have the complication of being stir crazy with COVID. So please do take time to take care of yourselves and be kind to yourselves and kind to each other.
Thank you. I do like the focus of the theme that keeps running throughout is taking care both of ourselves and of each other. I really appreciate that. Let's see, Director Berg.
Yes, good evening. So I just wanted to say, Tara, like you are telling the truth about Dr. Saltzman's story time, because my junior, it was like the hottest ticket. She's like, "Are you going?" Like, it's story time. So anyway, I'm going to be at the next one. Apparently it's where all the cool kids go. So thank you, Dr. Saltzman, for doing that. And it goes across all ages. The other thing I wanted to say was I went to an IR this week for Jackson High School, and it's the first one I've done for a high school. And it was a great IR. Of course, it's a great school. The folks there are amazing, but I just want to give a special thank you to all of our school counselors. They're on the front line of this thing. They're doing the hard work. They're interacting with the kids. And I know that they are really trying, they're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks in terms of connecting. It's via social media, it's via Google Classrooms. They're literally losing sleep trying to serve our kids. So I just want to say to all our school counselors out there, thank you, thank you, thank you. And the social emotional learning, we talk every month and every 2 weeks about how important it is. Well, they're the ones that are implementing all the things that we are talking about, the importance thereof. So just wanted to highlight that today, and just everyone have a safe and wonderful holiday.
Thank you. And let's see, Director Mitchell.
Oh, yes, thank you. And Director Andrews, thank you for taking over legislative rep after I've been doing it for 5 years. And Darlene or Jamie, could you please let WASDA know that he's a new rep so he can get on the emails? And Andrew, there are Tuesday calls right now, and then there are calls for when the legislative session starts. So hopefully you'll get on those emails so you can Zoom like I've been Zooming.
Oh, you didn't want to still do it? You know, you can do it. I'll take the credit, but you can do it. It'll be great.
Yeah, no, it's you're the new person, but I'm here to support you. And today's session was actually about student reps and student voice. So Caroline, thank you for asking the students to go first. And I mean, I'm just gonna say you look like a 70s dance hall, and I hope that's okay. It's fun. You bring a little joy to the meeting tonight. But one thing we did, talking about student reps, the Riverview School District did report the student rep voice. Do we give the students a voice and changing our policies and procedures, which I believe we have in the past? And are we responding to student needs? And that they want to sort of develop a student voice toolkit. But they're like, how can we engage our students in some of these things? They would also like to know if we have any resources or any documents or anything for our student reps, if we could share them with WASDA. They're just compiling a list. There were about, I thought I wrote it down, yeah, 31 legislative reps on the call today, and about 71 of those school districts, so it's about 22 of the 31 have student reps. And that one thing they also asked, and they asked it several times, on the WASDA webpage is a link for students to sign up as the student rep, and it's called this to become a student advocate. The students can then get on the distribution list for different opportunities to testify, be parts of committees, be parts of different groups. Amina, I think you've participated in some things for them. That they spoke very highly of you last week when I was talking to them. And but different opportunities. The other thing, they have work groups, they have and different types of things, and again getting on a distribution list, that, and especially topics around equity and social emotional, anything that you guys would like to participate in, that I think you'd be outstanding. The other thing they said too is that I appreciate, Amina, you being on the working with the ASB leaders and everything. It was sort of how else, especially in these Zoom days, can the district support you in leading some student forums so that you can bring back diverse student voices to us. Then also a small group, maybe there are opportunities that I know that the superintendents have attended to sit on some of those meetings, but maybe there are opportunities too for the school board, especially high school, with a lot of the social emotional issues related to high school right now with COVID. Maybe there are some different opportunities for the board members to sit on and hear a broader student voice. So that just a different ideas that came up today is the discussion. And one other story that Dr. Saltzman wanted me to share, that really quickly, my daughter will be going, depending, to a school in Pennsylvania next February for the spring semester, and she received her roommate assignment. I asked her where her roommate is from, and she said California, which is a really big state, but as Pam knows, Pam wants to know, is you from Los Angeles? Maybe you're from near her. If you're from Northern California, maybe you're from near me. So Becca rolled her eyes and said what city her friend was from. And I said, oh, that's not too far from where I grew up. And I actually have a high school friend that's a high school teacher there, probably a big city. So what high school did she go to? She went to the school that my friend was a teacher at. Well, I showed my friend's name. I pulled her up on Facebook and showed the name to my daughter, and that my friend was her A-push teacher. And then I sent a Facebook message through to my friend who sent back like a little, oh, she is such a, and gave a bunch of lovely adjectives, which I showed to Becca, and Becca showed her roommate, who said back, I can't believe she remembers me. And I said, tell her teachers remember their students. Well, then I was sharing this story yesterday, and Peter Scott went to the exact same high school. So very, 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 very small world. Kind of weird. I texted my friend and said, hey, just so you know, our deputy superintendent went to your high school, and her only word was weird. But many decades later, so, you know, I'm a little older than Peter, but there's no way that she was his teacher. But anyway, just a funny that a teacher can remember a student, which I know every single teacher on this call knows that you guys remember students. And so just a small world story. So thank you for indulging me.
Thank you for sharing your story. That is a cute one. Connections. We are all connected. 6 degrees. Isn't that what they say? Okay, so I'm going to go next. And if anyone can figure out the pattern of that we're talking in, you get a prize. So mine is going to be very brief because I took a little time off and it was Thanksgiving, and I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. But I did have an opportunity to sit in on Tambark Creek's IR this morning, and it is not a school that I have been to very often, mostly because we just built it, but because it's also the furthest away from where I live. So it was fun to learn more about the student body and the teachers, and I have to say they are just doing an incredible job. It was different than the other IRs I've been to. They're all different, and they all have their special feeling about them. So that was really great. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Vice President Lassane.
Unmute myself. Well, there's a lot of reasons I'm thankful, and I hope a lot of you had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. But you know, I'm thankful for so many things. I'm thankful for having colleagues like you all on the board to work with. It's really important that you have a good strong board, and we do have a good, strong board. And you guys really are a wonder and an awesome group of people to work with on this board. And I'm so thankful that we have student voice on this board. We have the two best student representative on our boards right now, because they work very hard within their schools. They're very active in our schools, and it shows because they come and they mention things. And thank you so much for what you're doing in the community, from the food drives to just socializing with your fellow students there. You do the work that needs to be done right now, especially right now. I am also thankful for allowing me the opportunity of being your vice president again. And thank you very much for the confidence that you have in me, for voting me in as the next vice president for another year. Thank you. I'm also thankful, and I'm going to assure you that what the students are doing for ensuring that other students are engaged in school through Zooming with them, having COVID style drive-through with light shows. It's important. It's very important, because my biggest concern is during this time, we've had a tough year, but during this time of pandemic crisis, how are we meeting the needs of our students? That's very important for me. How are we meeting the needs? Are we allowing them to use the technology that we have at our fingertips with Zoom, and establish new clubs, be engaged, being able to talk to one another, and just feel like, you know, you're not alone during this time, that you have someone here that's willing to talk with you and keep you engaged and just being friends. That's very important. And I would like to also hope that we are doing that same thing within our school day, that teachers are not just thinking about as they used to say, the 3 R's, but also engaging in ensuring that the social emotional welfare and needs of our students is alive and working well. We have wonderful students. You saw the iReady students, and they were focused on reading, they're focused on math, but how are we managing to meet their needs in this, this time of challenges through Zooming with maybe clubs, allowing students to get together, to talk to one another, to ensure that they are heard, that they're being heard, and that they are engaged with other students. That's very important. And during this time of the year, we have so much to be grateful and thankful for. I hope that we are ensuring that they are being well taken care of. In a couple of weeks, we'll be able to go on holiday break, another winter break. And I hope that every staff member, every teacher, every parent, every student out there gets the time that they need to hopefully put away all of the challenges and just relax and take in the holidays and enjoy what we can do in a safe, sane, and healthy way. So with that, I'd like to say, enjoy your holidays as it comes. And we hope to see every one of you back in the new year, recharged and ready to go. Thank you.
And Caroline, your pattern was years of service.
Thank you. I was just about to say something to that effect. I appreciate that. Thank you for identifying the pattern. We're doing a little task here tonight. But I do want to say on that note, you know, an enormous thank you to Director Lassane as our most experienced director for stepping up and serving in a executive role again, but also to our newer directors, which are taking on enormous challenges of growth and learning, and our student representatives who are, I don't even need to say it practically because it's so obvious, but have really grown into their roles as well. So I just want to thank all of you. I think we are a really solid team, and I just look at the momentum that we've had in a tremendous time in history, and I'm just looking forward to continuing it into next year for the upcoming year. So thank you. Okay, so now that takes us to 10.0, which is our public comments. And the board does recognize the value of public comment in our board meetings. Jamie, do we have any public comments for this evening?
We did just receive one. Let me share my screen. Okay. Good evening. I understand you are finalizing your legislative priorities for 2021. Please provide the following facts in your discussions with legislators. 1, for years, the Everett SD has received substantially more state taxpayer funds, 24 regionalization factor, than nearly all other school districts across the state who are also represented by legislators, some of whom serve on education committees. 2, in July, in the middle of the pandemic, the Everett School Board approved across the board salary raises for administrators. And then in September, Everett had to lay off bus drivers and others when those same administrators finally realized there would be fewer enrollments and fewer services needed. 3, the Everett SD board members did not stand up to the local teachers union and basically gave away the entire McCleary levy swap funds in 2018 to salaries, leaving little for special education and other areas. 4, I guess I could go like this. 4, the Everett SD failed its $317 million bond measure that it ran in August in the middle of the pandemic. To my knowledge, a failure to lead by example, no Everett school district members nor administrators have donated equivalent funds to the district on the order of $12,000 each that the 20-year bond would have required of each of their households in property taxes. In my view, the Everett SD is in no position to make demands on legislators. Thank you, Jeff Heckathorn. That is the only public comment we received for tonight.
Okay, thank you. We will take some time to get a response to some of those answers, although I believe some of those questions have already previously been answered, but we will follow up as well. Thank you for reading that. Okay.
President Mason, if I may, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I'm
Yes.
wondering if Kathy Woods could announce in Spanish that it's okay for families to log off the board meeting.
If they
the ones that were here for the iReady recognition.
Buenas noches. Si ustedes estaban aquí por la recognición por iReady, si no quiere quedarse en la reunión, no necesita quedarse. Puede decir buenas noches y ir para su cena o para su iReady o cualquier cosa que quieres hacer. Si quieres quedarse en la reunión, sí puede.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I appreciate both of you. Okay, now we move on to the consent agenda, item 11.0. And Dr. Salzman, please provide an overview of tonight's consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items such as meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, surplus lists, gifts, grants, and recurring contracts. Sometimes it includes items that occur less frequently but are of a routine business nature. These items are usually reviewed by the board in the Friday report, 1 or more weeks before the board meeting. This gives directors time to ask staff questions or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of those items. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By its definition, a consent agenda is not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office received no questions. The consent agenda is presented as published for board approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as is. Would any director like to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in the new business section of the agenda? Hearing no requests, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The consent agenda is approved. Thank you. Okay, we move on to strategic progress monitoring. And tonight we get an update and overview of the class of 2021 progress to graduation. And at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Woods. Kathy, we're not hearing anything.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I have to share screen and get everything in order here.
Screen looks great. Presentation's up.
I want to thank you for having me here this evening to share the progress of moving our current seniors towards graduation and towards their success post-graduation. I'll be reporting on the progress our students are making and the systems of support that we have and that we continue to develop to ensure student success. Just a side note here, the pictures that you will see in this presentation were taken during summer graduation in August. Our staff, ever creative, worked together to ensure a physically distant graduation ceremony for our students who graduated in the summer months. Everyone was masked except when the students were introduced and when they were photographed. Many of the students were able to bring family members, and you can see the pride on their faces. Just like honoring the younger students earlier this evening with the iReady, these pictures and the events help me remember why we work so hard for every single student every day. One of the things that it's important to note is that our key performance outcomes begin with 100% of our students graduating, but they don't end there. It's also key that our students graduate with a post-secondary transition plan and that we have set them on a trajectory to be successful in achieving those goals. The data I will share will start with a look backward at the graduation rates for our most recent graduating classes, as well as the impacts that COVID had on our students in Everett and also statewide. I will then talk about the progress of our current seniors towards graduation and post-secondary success. So first, to take a look backwards a bit, through the support of our entire system, we have sustained the high graduation rates that we have seen over the past years, with again, a 95% four-year graduation rate for the class of 2020 and over a 96% rate, five-year rate for the class of 2019. Maintaining this high level is a pretty amazing accomplishment in the best of times. It's even more remarkable given the challenges of the COVID closure of school buildings this past spring. Last spring was certainly a special case. I'm going to share some data to paint a picture. The state data is pulled from a webinar that OSPI and the State Board of Education did earlier this fall. And our local numbers are gathered from the staff in our schools and from our student information systems. The numbers are somewhat preliminary, but they do give us a really good picture of last year's ending. You can see here that incomplete grades were the rare exception in Everett Public Schools. State Superintendent Rakedahl asked that we use incompletes rather than giving failing grades or no credits so that students would have an opportunity to make them up. He also asked that we make every attempt to help students earn credits and make progress in their learning so we didn't have many incompletes. And you can see that our incomplete rate for Everett Public Schools was quite a bit lower than it was for the state of Washington. And our students are already working to resolve these incompletes, working with teachers individually, taking summer school classes, and taking the next course in a sequence of courses to demonstrate competency, which allows us to award credit for the course from last spring. Last spring, seniors who were unable to complete some graduation requirements due to the COVID-19 pandemic were granted waivers under the state emergency rules. This chart shows the numbers and percentages of students in Everett Public Schools who were granted these waivers last spring. Just over 2% of our seniors had a waiver, though the number was higher for students with disabilities and students experiencing poverty. School personnel worked very hard to ensure that students did meet the requirements and were granted waivers as only a last resort. Most waivers were for elective classes, and so they just didn't earn the total number of credits, but they met their graduation requirements in required core courses. Only 11 of the total waivers were in a required English, science, or social studies class, and none of the waivers were granted in math. Statewide, waivers were granted at slightly higher rates than they were in Everett Public Schools, though at lower rates for students with disabilities. 2020 was also the first year for expanded pathways for meeting graduation requirements. Previous graduation classes needed to meet the English language arts and math requirements by meeting standard through testing on the Smarter Balanced Assessment or on an alternative assessment such as the SAT or the ACT. These tables here show how students met the pathway requirement in English language arts in Everett Public Schools and in the state of Washington. A student may appear in the table multiple times. I'll give you an example. If a student met standard when they took the SBA in their sophomore year and then earned a C+ or higher in an AP course in English or a related subject, and they took the AP exam and they earned a 3 or higher on that exam, and they took the SAT in their junior year and met that standard, they would appear in each one of those rows. Note that the percentage of students meeting the requirement in Everett Public Schools through AP course and exam taking, as well as through the SAT and through the CTE pathway, are significantly higher than the state. Many factors go into this. For example, we provide free school day testing on the SAT for all juniors. We also have expansive offerings in AP and in CTE. Few of our students graduated through the ASVAB pathway, and that's the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, which is the military entrance exam and primarily used by students who are interested in going into the military. Both statewide and in our district, the number of students meeting standard in math is lower than in English language arts. In Everett, we have significantly more of our students taking dual credit courses such as pre-calculus and statistics than is true for the state. Again, this is in large part due to expansive offerings and due to our partnership with Everett Community College. However, most students who take and earn a grade that qualifies for college credit in such courses as pre-calculus have also met standard on the Smarter Balanced Assessment and the SAT and are going to show up in multiple categories. The class of 2020 was the last class, as the law currently stands, in which students were eligible for a waiver of the English language arts and math pathway requirements through admission to a post-secondary institution of learning, a university, a community college, a trade school, etc. Last year, emergency rules also allowed districts to provide a waiver if the student had intended to test to take the SAT or the SBA, for example, as a way to meet the pathway requirement, and that test was canceled due to COVID closures last spring. You can see that the number of waivers requested in Everett was less than is true in the state as a whole. Just over 50% of the state's waivers were based on admission to a higher education institution, but many more of them in Everett were due to admission to a higher education institution. 10 students in Everett Public Schools needed waivers in English language arts only. 62 students needed waivers in math only, and 28 students needed waivers in both English language arts and math, for a total of 100 students requiring these waivers. To give you some perspective, only 19 students total needed waivers in 2019. And that trend of approximately 5 times more students needing waivers in 2020 versus 2019 was consistent throughout the state because of all the cancellations of testing throughout the spring. Having looked at the impact of last spring, we're now going to look forward to the class of 2021 and their progress towards graduation. There are 3 pieces to graduation requirements in the state of Washington and Everett Public Schools. Students must earn the total number of credits and earn them in the correct areas. We've traditionally tracked this in Everett using a red, yellow, green indicator for being off track, in danger of being off track, and on track. The second piece is the graduation pathways, traditionally assessments, but now expanded, as I discussed earlier. Both of these pieces are based on the student's high school and beyond plan. The class of 2021 is the first one that must meet the 24 credit requirement. They have to earn 24 credits total. Last year it was 22. None of the 17 core credits can be waived. The personalized pathway requirements and electives are based on the student's high school and beyond plan, as are the core credits they take. For example, you recently passed Board Policy 2216, which states that we will automatically enroll students who meet or exceed standard on the 8th grade SBA or the high school Smarter Balance Assessment. And we will automatically enroll them in the next most rigorous level of advanced courses. The ultimate goal of the policy is that students would be automatically enrolled in dual credit courses, closing gap in access to college credit. Students and parents or guardians can opt out and enroll in alternative courses or programs as long as they align with the student's high school and beyond goal. The intent is that we're not just preparing students to graduate, but that we're preparing them to be successful in meeting their post-secondary goals and dreams. The diploma is required for that success, but it is not sufficient. Let's see how this year's class is doing in meeting the requirements. We have some good news. We have more students on track to earn 24 credits than we did at this time last year. So the larger pie chart is this year's class, and the smaller one is the class of 2020 in December of 2019. So at that time, 71.6% of last year's class were on track to earn 24 credits. And this year, it's 79.3%. In fact, in the past, students, when we would do this report, which we've done for many years, that level of students in the green hovered right around 70%. One of the major differences for the class of 2021 is that we have known since before they were 9th graders that they needed to earn 24 credits in order to graduate. So we put more supports in place, including more opportunities to earn credit in middle school and more ways to recover credit earlier in high school should they experience a failure in a course. So this is a big celebration that we've moved those students in the green from 71 to 79%, but there's still a really heavy lift. We no longer have the yellow buffer zone. So at this time last year, if you just look at the reds, there were 13% of their students not on track to graduate. Well, this year we have the yellow plus the red who really aren't on track. And so that's 20.7%. Some good news though, is that most of those 13% did graduate. We were able to help them recover those credits and get on track to graduate. We had a 95% graduation rate, but this year we do have a bigger challenge. We no longer have any yellow buffer zone, as students will need the 24 credits to graduate. In the larger pie circle, the ones that represent the class of 2021, those percentages include 4 students who have already graduated, and unfortunately 36 students who are currently inactive. They're not currently enrolled in our schools, nor have they enrolled in any other programs. Our staff are actively reaching out to these students and their families to get them re-enrolled with us or to find a program that will best meet their needs. If we break this red, yellow, green chart into, break it down by student group, you can see that we continue to have disparities with fewer students in some groups earning all their credits. We have supports to help the students, including individual graduation plans, credit recovery, and competency-based credit. But our staff are committed to and know we need to do better to meet the needs of all of our students. To reach our key outcomes that all students graduate prepared to be successful in meeting their post-secondary goals, we need universal supports for groups of students, and supports and interventions for individuals. And we often refer to those as Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 interventions and supports. Examples of Tier 1 supports include access to a common, viable, and rigorous curriculum. For example, we've implemented a pre-AP English curriculum combined with the Springboard instructional materials for students in 9th and 10th grade. Additionally, counselors work with students throughout middle and high school to plan their course taking and to meet their goals. There are school-wide frequent progress checks to determine if students need additional support. Tier 2 supports are for identified groups of students who require additional help. The AVID elective is an example of such a support system. Students are identified for the AVID elective, generally in middle school, but they can join AVID in high school as well. The AVID elective is a college preparatory class for students who have college aspirations and maybe first-generation college students, or live in families experiencing poverty, or are from a racial, ethnic, or language group traditionally underrepresented in college. Tier 3 supports are designed for individual students, more of a case management strategy. Students identified as being off track to graduate will have personalized supports, including individual meetings with families, tutoring, home visits, and credit recovery plans, all designed to provide stronger connections, hope, and a specific plan to help them get back on track, not only to graduate, but to meet their post-secondary goals. Planning starts with the frequent monitoring of all students. The college and career readiness teams at each of our high schools meet frequently to review progress of students and identify those who are not on track, whether that's due to credits or graduation pathways. This is simply one small portion of one spreadsheet that gives you a picture of the level of detail that our teams monitor. From this spreadsheet, an individual plan is created for each student who is off track. I've marked out any identifying information, but you can see the level of planning that takes place. On this form used at one of our schools, the OneNote is updated by staff on a regular basis, including when they contact families, as you can see here. Here is a different example from another school, just as detailed and based on both extensive planning with the student and on frequent monitoring. Ensuring that students earn the credits they need to both meet their graduation requirements and their post-secondary goals is one part of the graduation requirement. Another is that they meet graduation pathways in English, language arts, and math. As I noted earlier, this was previously met through statewide assessment, and now there are multiple ways to meet the pathway. 75% of our active seniors have already met their pathway requirements in both English, language arts, and math. Another 20% are currently in courses that would meet the pathway requirement. They're in a dual credit course in math or English language arts, or the Bridge to College Math Transition course, or an AP course that qualifies, or they are completing a sequence of courses in CTE that leads to an industry recognized certification or dual credit. That leaves about 4% of our students, almost 50 students, who were counting on testing this spring or another means to meet their pathway because they didn't have a chance to test last spring either. As I've noted, there are a variety of ways for students to meet their pathways, and many of them are quite rigorous. As we talked about those dual credit courses and AP courses and exams. This year, students with disabilities who qualify for special services can also use a locally determined assessment to graduate, but this is the last year that this is available. We are expecting the state to further expand graduation pathways for the future. I've talked about the High School and Beyond plan that drives student course taking and systems of support, interventions, and acceleration. One measure of how we're preparing students to meet their post-secondary goals is through FAFSA completion. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. This is an area of emphasis this year with all our high schools, and it's also a challenge since we're not in person. Last year, for the class of 2020, 63% of our seniors completed a FAFSA. That's actually up 2% from 2019, which is a big celebration since we finished the year in remote learning. However, again, you can see disparities. Barely over 1/4 of our students who qualify for special education services completed a FAFSA last year. And there are disparities among our racial and ethnic groups as well. For example, fewer than half of our students who identify as Pacific Islanders have completed a FAFSA last year. This year, completion of the FAFSA has started more slowly than recent years. The FAFSA window opened October 1st. So this, which was taken in mid-November, is early data, but it's still a call to action. At that time, 27% of all of our students had completed a FAFSA, and currently it's just over 31%. Last year at this time, just over 38% of our seniors had completed a FAFSA. Our counselors and high school principals receive data each week regarding each student's status on the FAFSA. Teams are reaching out both individually and in larger events to help families complete this application. And we're emphasizing the need to reach out to each one of our seniors. This Thursday evening, we'll have a FAFSA financial aid night via Zoom. We've invited students and families through US postal mail, email, and social media. The main takeaway is that we need to shift our practice. While we need to continue to provide interventions for our students, including our seniors, we also need to help our students plan a personalized pathway through high school to their post-secondary success. When they see high school as relevant to meeting their goals and their graduation pathway aligns with those goals, we will see even more success. We need to continue to identify practices that are leading to inequitable outcomes and address those practices. Holding FAFSA family events, including support in the family's first language, is an example of a promising practice. In Thursday's FAFSA night, we will have interpreters on hand to help. Training case managers for seniors who qualify for special services to understand the need for completing a FAFSA and on providing the support to the student and the family to complete the FAFSA is another such practice. The bottom line is that individual outreach and positive relationships will always be a key to student success. So I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I'm happy to hear your comments and answer questions.
Thank you very much for a great presentation. Very well organized and really did a great job of walking us through the details of graduation in a very unusual year. And I, for one, have to say I'm really impressed with some of these numbers, especially given the remote environment that we're in right now, to see that we do still have students on track to graduate. But it's going to be an uphill climb for some of it with the 24 credits and the remote environment. So with that, I would like to turn it over to directors. And if I could ask that the presentation be pulled down, that's helpful in seeing who would like to speak. Any directors or student representatives, please. Just wave a hand. Director Mitchell.
Yeah, this is really impressive data, but a couple of questions, because I believe, is the SAT still canceled, and are they still not planning on having the SBA? So that takes away 2 of those pathways for ELA. So how are we confirming that those kids that don't have those alternate pathways, they just lost half of them, which is I think a problem, but how big of a problem is that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We've gone through and looked at each one of our seniors, and there are just under 50 seniors who do not have a pathway right now. Because, and yes, maybe we'll be able to test in smaller groups that it hasn't been officially canceled at this time. But the rest of our seniors are in a course that meets that requirement. So they may be in a dual credit. So they might be in college in the high school English class. And so if they pass that class with the grade that they need to potentially earn credit in college, even if they didn't sign up for the college credit, then that will achieve that pathway. But you're right, there are some students for whom it's currently they don't have a pathway, and we have to figure that out either through testing in small groups or and I'm also anticipating that the state is going to do something, because we're not the only people in this situation.
Yeah, thank you. And my next question is, I think I read in the Seattle Times that is a state, Washington State is one of the lowest when it comes to FAFSAs. So is there a state initiative that's supporting us at all in this effort?
There is the Washington Student Achievement Council, which is agency through the governor's office, is great. They've got a great portal. They're working on it. But yes, the state of Washington last year, I think, was 49th out of the 50 states. Our FAFSA rate is higher than the state average, but it is certainly something that we have room for improvement. But yes, the state has really great supports. One recent example, there's a college-bound scholarship that our middle school students who qualify for free or reduced lunch can sign up for. And then that guarantees, if they still qualify for that, that when they fill out the FAFSA and get their college financial aid when they graduate, that if there's a gap between the tuition and a small allowance for books and fees, if there's a gap for that for our state schools, our state will cover that gap. And last year, our counselors in middle school worked really, really hard. I mean, they've been working very, very hard. Last year, they extended the opportunity to sign up for this year's 9th graders because they were remote in 8th grade. So they extended that to this fall. And then just last week, Governor Inslee signed a proclamation saying all the students who currently qualify for it are going to get automatically enrolled in that program rather than having to get all the signatures and get signed up. Having said that, our counselors in middle school for the class of 2023 had 91% of the students who were eligible signed up. So the state really is working at it. And I can tell you, I appreciate what Director Berg said earlier about our counselors. They are working really hard to make sure each student is connected. So the college-bound scholars who earn or who qualify for free or reduced lunch, if they have the college-bound scholarship, they're much more likely to complete their FAFSA. So it starts in middle school and then goes all the way through their senior year and beyond.
Okay, thank you.
That's great additional background. Thank you. Student Director Nichols, I saw a hand.
Yeah, so it's funny. I was just talking to my wife about this the other day about, it's going to be interesting to see how many seniors take a gap year next year, or have to stay home and help their family work. Their working class families, or just how that's going to affect admission rates at colleges. But my main question here is, looking at, and I know that traditionally this is a tough, for various reasons, tough population to outreach to, but our numbers for our Native American students are not looking great. So I don't know if there's something. I know I've talked a lot with Kelly Clevenger about our students with disabilities and all the programs that we're ramping up. Is there anything new that you can speak to, things that we're doing for our Native students and Native Alaskan students to kind of increase that outreach, or is that maybe something that you can get back to me on later?
That's absolutely something I can get back to you. You will notice in the presentation, there wasn't data regarding our Native American, Native Alaskan students because it's suppressed data because the number is really small.
Right.
But no, even though we can't produce that data publicly, it is absolutely something that we keep our eye on, and I will be glad to get back to you on specific outreaches to our Native populations.
Thank you.
I just have.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Director Berg.
No, I just had a question. So Kathy, maybe I missed it. Is there going to be an SAT this year? Has that been decided on?
I can jump in here, Kathy.
Oh.
So the school day SAT is scheduled for March, and we have the plan to give it. However, it will depend on our ability to give it logistically, given the safety and health guidelines. So we will make that decision as close as possible to the test so that we give everybody the best chance.
Perfect. And then my other question, okay, I think it's for the other Kathy, we'll see, is just around the 9th grade, or so college and high school. So I know we've got these 24 credits. We're front loading kids for all the right reasons to get these credits early and robustly, right, in 8th grade, and then of course into 9th grade. this is the second time I have a freshman who's a ninth grader sitting in classes who can't get credit as college in the high school because they're in ninth grade. So I was hoping this problem would be fixed by the time my second one came through. It's not. She's getting an A just like her peers. Her peers are going to have their college A's and she gets the wah wah. So I'm wondering how many other students, do we know how many other students are in that boat? I've got to believe there's got to be other families like mine who are literally losing money simply because of the age of their student. But again, because we're front loading them as a district, right, we know that's a problem. So I guess, do we know that or could we know that?
I can certainly find out and get back to you very quickly about how many ninth graders are in classes that qualify for college in the high school.
Okay.
I think all of our classes with ninth graders in them that qualify for college in the high school are also AP classes. So they can potentially earn that college credit through the AP exam as well.
Unless you've got a ninth grader in French 3.
Okay, a ninth grader in
and
French 3.
This is the second time around I've got a ninth grader in French 3 and I had a sophomore in French 4. So it's, yeah, in addition to APES and yeah, I get all of those and that makes sense, but it's still a high stakes test, right? And so that, and as a ninth grader taking that high stakes test isn't always a guaranteed college credit, and the colleges don't necessarily take that AP credit.
Right. So one of the things I am doing is I'm also right in the middle of producing the course catalog, and I'm committed to making sure that on those college and the high school courses that it's really clear
awesome.
On there that only by state law, only 10th through 12th graders can earn college credit in these, through the college and the high school program.
And then my last question is just around the FAFSA numbers and some of the disparities. Do we have a breakout for kids? I know it's a plan, right? That college and beyond, it's a plan of what they're going to do, and it might not include college. And so as a result, families might not think about FAFSA. Do we know how many are taking our trades and apprenticeship routes, just to say, like, so maybe we do have, 65% of X, class of students only filling out FAFSA, but 20% in that same class is going to do an apprenticeship. Like, do we break numbers out like that at all?
We do. The students are currently taking those surveys now. So,
awesome.
So we don't have current data for our class of 2021. And one of the things that often students and their families don't realize is if you're going to a trade school, that you also fill out the FAFSA to get financial aid for that. So, so that's also an opportunity for us to do more education.
Okay, and the union partners for those trade schools would maybe be a good avenue to have them push the FAFSA message as well. So
thank you for that. That's a great idea.
Thanks for everything you do. Thanks.
Thank you. I was looking for some background, which I think Kathy's provided on the state requirements around AP exams in college and the high school, because I remember something about that. So I appreciate that clarification too. Student representatives or Director Lassane?
I'd like a couple of minutes if I can. On slide number 7, Kathy, thank you so much for putting this presentation together, because you have so much great information here. You mentioned incompletes by grade levels. We're talking about students with incompletes and the number of courses that these students have that are incomplete. And I see that grade 10th grade, such a large difference between number of incompletes by course count versus number of incompletes by just the number of students. So several of those students have multiple classes that they have incompletes in, is what I'm gathering out of that. My question is, with the semester going to start again, say, at the end of January and February, and they'll still have required courses to be taken that semester. What are we going to, and what's the plan for summertime in order to, because these kids are going to constantly be falling behind. What are we going to be doing in the summertime for these 10th graders as well as 11th graders that are so far behind, and especially our 12th graders that are behind, in order to get them caught up so that, this is almost a year decline that they'll be in.
Yes, so thank you for that question. You're right that for many of our students who got an incomplete, they got more than one incomplete, because often those were students who were not really engaging in the springtime. Most of those students are engaging now, and many of them have made up those incompletes already, or are making them up because they're taking, maybe it was an English 2 class that they were taking and now they're in English 3, and so they can show competency in English 3 and we can backfill the grade. And you were really proactive as a board in passing those policies in the spring to make sure that could happen and making them continue this year. We are currently planning what are we doing for this summer so that students can either make those things up or continue to work. And so we will have some robust plans for that. I know that's part of an agenda that is on a meeting tomorrow. So we'll continue doing that. And I know that that's being planned by a number of people, you know, across across our programs. So it is definitely something in our mind.
I appreciate that. Are we going to extend just beyond the kids that need to, you know, do course recovery? Are we going to extend summer school beyond that? Because this has been a very unique year, and there may be more kids in the springtime that we find that have placed themselves in the same predicament. Are we going to provide, and I'm hopeful, I always remain hopeful with the vaccine coming out, that summer might look completely different than what it is right now. Are we planning to do even more to allow our students to get caught up?
I wonder, Dr. Scott, if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, I was going to jump in there. The answer is yes, and we're monitoring the extent to which we may receive some federal relief or intervention to support some of those more unconventional sort of runways back in or transitions back into school that would be on top of and complement, supplement our conventional summer school program. So we see it, Director Lassane, as kind of an and both, and we're anxiously awaiting some signal from the federal government or any local revenue source that might allow us to expand our offerings to for remediation and just reacclimation to school. And so that would be kind of that and both approach. But as Dr. Wood said, we're in planning phase at this point.
I understand. And another question I have, Kathy, thank you very much, Peter, for that explanation. On slide number 12, you talk about the waivers, the percent of waivers, the expedited assessment appeals. And if I look down the list at the waivers, I look at the underrepresented groups being in the double digits, you know, African-American, Black students with math waivers. I know math is higher in every category, so I understand that. 17%, the Hispanic at 14%, Pacific Islanders at 10, 2 or more races at 13, and our English language learners at 23%, and you know, even students with disabilities at 13%. And I kind of look at those are double digits for all of our underrepresented groups compared to with our white category at 5.1%. What are we looking at as far as math? When you look at the category of math alone, what are we doing and looking at how are we delivering math during this crisis period of COVID? Online, digital, that will focus in on appearing to our, you know, getting to our underrepresented groups so those numbers aren't as high.
So Pam, are you referring to in terms of students graduating or just in general? Because if it's more of a general question, that might be a great Friday report follow-up in terms of from our math folks or
Yes.
Dr. Scott rather than Kathy, unless it's specific to the class of 2021 or 2021 to graduation.
2021
Yeah,
and 2021.
And I can respond part of it, and then I think it would be a great Friday report. You are exactly correct that the numbers of expedited assessment appeal waivers were required for students across the board. And that was true. If you look at it, it's true both in Everett Public Schools and in the state in general. And we are not meeting the needs of our students in mathematics in particular. We do have a new math adoption that we're doing now, but really students need the expedited assessment appeal if they haven't met the standard on the statewide assessments. And so these students, many of these students didn't have another opportunity last spring to take the SAT or the SBA, but they also, it means that they didn't meet that standard in their sophomore year when they first took it. So I appreciate the question, and yes, it's certainly an issue, and I think we'd be glad to put something together in a Friday report about how we're addressing that.
That sounds great. Thank you very much. And the other final question I have is the SATs. I don't know if you or Catherine would be able to answer this one, but when you start looking at the SAT in March, possibly, how would that affect some of the students that are applying to college?
Yeah, I can. I'd be glad to answer that. Most colleges right now are having SAT and ACT, having those college entrance exams are optional. And so they are allowing students to apply and looking more holistically without that. And that's almost all of our, in fact, I can't think of any private or public state schools that are requiring the SAT and the ACT. And that's true of prestigious colleges across the country as well. But it does mean that the other parts of their application then, rigorous course taking, their personal essay, all of their letters of recommendation, and some of the other kinds of things have more impact.
Thank you.
President Mason, could I ask for just 30 quick seconds to clarify my earlier question?
Certainly.
For feedback later. So on slide 16 on the progress to graduation, the data for Native Americans and Native Alaskans wasn't suppressed. And, they're by far the group in most need of help. And so that's what I'm referring to into what outreach are we doing, things like that. So when you do get back to me, that's specifically what I was asking.
Thank you very much. That must have been just over a number to suppress. It's suppressed.
Student representatives, do you have any comments or questions tonight? Okay, I'm not hearing any. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on Director Berg's question about ninth graders and sophomores getting credit for certain classes and such. And I would, I'm hoping maybe get a little background on the Washington State restrictions on that and some of the thinking behind that, because I think what confuses me is, they're moving forward more now with competency-based education where students advance upon demonstration of mastery in a course. And it seems counterintuitive to me that they wouldn't allow a student in ninth grade to show mastery and get, to Director Berg's point, the same credit as everyone else in the class. And so, we might have limited ability to change that in our district without state support, but I would be interested in a little more details.
Yeah, and it is a state law. I mean, that's
Yeah,
part, and that's why I'm
I
thinking
know.
like how many
I'm
kiddos, yeah.
kind of curious why, I guess. I'm sure there's a reason behind it.
And I'd be glad to look into it. It's actually a fairly recent state law, maybe 4 or 5 years ago that it changed so that 9th graders could no longer receive credit.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I think we've gone around, and unless someone has additional comment or question, I think at this point we are at a break. And so I'm going to thank Kathy Woods for all the answers and a great presentation. And I'm showing 6:40 on my clock. So we're going to do a 15-minute break, which would bring us to 6:55. So I will look forward to seeing everyone back then.
I see you, Kathy. Zoom, you're it.
We're back. Let's see, I'm seeing directors. We have a quorum. I think if everyone's okay, we're going to go ahead and move on with our meeting. Okay, we are on to section 13.0, which is our information and discussion tonight. And we have 2 items. 13.01 is school reopening status update. And I am guessing that, let's see, sorry, that Kathy Reeves is going to kick us off. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for giving us the opportunity to give you our monthly update for the reopening status. I put this picture here. It's one of my favorites. Doesn't this teacher look like she's doing an amazing job remotely?
I want to be in her class.
Yeah.
Feeling Russell. Woohoo!
So we are making a slight little flip. We're moving the teacher voices to the beginning tonight, and Dr. Scott will introduce that in a second. Then we'll talk to you about remote learning, the reentry status, community engagement, health and safety operations, and then we'll talk about some communications. So I will just start out by handing it right over to Dr. Scott.
Great, thanks, Kathy. And back by popular demand, we've got teacher voices again tonight, and we thought it would be important to again highlight the work of our staff who are working so incredibly hard to provide engaging instruction responsive to their student needs. And it's really difficult to narrow down. We've got a lot of candidates to showcase their work. We made the difficult decision to narrow it down to 3 and really appreciate their time and appreciate the board and the dispensation to prioritize their piece here first in the presentation because they've got some family commitments. We're going to start actually with Giselle Alcantar Soto, who is a world language teacher at Everett High School, followed by Nicole Carter, who teaches science at Evergreen Middle School, and then Janet Kim, who's a 4th grade teacher at Cedarwood. So again, we're really excited to have these 3, and we appreciate that they've agreed to illustrate one impactful strategy each. So I'll kind of serve as a moderator here, and we'll start with Giselle.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. Good evening, everybody. My name is Giselle Alcantar Soto, as he mentioned. This is my 3rd year at Everett High School, and I am a world language teacher, particularly Spanish and Heritage Spanish, and this year AP Spanish, which is really, really fun. So some context before I begin. This strategy is I use for my AP Spanish language and culture class. So these are advanced, more mature, older students. You'll see why that matters in a second. This was a final assessment for the first unit that we did called Families in Diverse Societies. And a sub-theme of that theme is the current challenges families face. So I wanted to give my students something that was relevant, something that was current, something that was gonna catch their attention. And so I chose this movement called Ni una más, ni una menos. You may have heard of it, maybe not, but it translates to not one more, not one less. And it refers to the increasingly alarming high rates of femicide across Latin America. And of course, this is a heavy topic, but it is a current movement. And I wanted to make sure that my students were okay with such a difficult topic, but it is an important one. And so before we move forward with this, I do want to preface that we had a conversation with the students. We talked about this, what it meant to have a discussion like this. And they all agreed that this was something that they wanted to get into and learn together about. And so there's that bit of context. So this strategy is for a summative assessment. Students were tasked to create a PSA or a public service announcement around the femicides in Latin America geared to a specific audience. And the strategy that I'm going to show to you today was geared for students to become familiarized with the success criteria by utilizing the rubrics on sample projects that met different criteria. Some of them met ITSE standards, some of them meet standards, and some of them were approaching standards. So all I needed to do this strategy was Google Slides, Zoom, and a little bit of annotate. So I showed my students one of the sample projects. This one, of course, actually all of them exceed standards, but we're gonna pretend this one exceeds standards. And then the students got to listen to the presentation. This was an oral presentation that goes along with the poster. And then I asked them to take a moment, read the rubric, and grade it. So we flip the classroom a little bit. They get to grade it, and by that, and by doing so, they get to become really, really familiar with what it is that I'm expecting from them. And at the same time, what it is that the AP folks are expecting from them, because this is a rubric directly pulled up from the AP site, which is how they will be graded. Then I continue and I show them another poster. This one is supposed to meet standards. As you can see, this one says, tu silencio es ensordecedor, translates to your silence is deafening. And so this was specifically geared towards the police force in many Latin American countries and their role in this issue. Once again, I asked students to take a moment to read through it, familiarize, and grade it. They become the teachers in a sense. We do it one more time with a different poster, and this one is supposed to not meet standards, meaning approaching standards. This one says, las mujeres no son objetos, meaning women are not objects. So this one kind of addressing the side of a little bit of toxic masculinity that plays into this issue. And once again, I ask students to grade it, and given the different standards, allow students to reflect and think. What is it that I want to achieve? Do I want to exceed standards? Do I want to meet standards? Or am I okay with just approaching standards? And so it gives them a chance to self-reflect and make a goal for themselves into what they want to do with this particular project. I couldn't leave without doing a second one. I know that was not what we were instructed to do, but as Vice President said, we cannot leave social emotional learning out of today's world. And so that's why I was like, I'm just gonna squeeze it in. So this is a super simple, but also really, really powerful strategy that I called family reunion. And it is out of restorative circles practices. And all you need for this one is, again, Zoom, Google Slides, and a list randomizer, and you'll see why in a sec. But it looks like this. I make it really fun, really bright. This is me in a Bitmoji form. It's called Reunión Familiar in Spanish. And I begin by asking students to share a rose, a thorn, or a bud. A rose is something good that happened, a thorn is something bad, and a bud is something exciting coming up. And as you can see on the right side of the screen, there's the order in which students are supposed to go on. So there's no surprises. I'm not trying to ambush anyone by calling on random students. They know exactly when they're meant to speak, but they also have the choice to pass because this is supposed to be helpful rather than anxiety inducing. After we do roses and thorns, we usually get into a conversation of the day, which is the question. For this day, we did more of a heavier question. What helps you when you feel unmotivated, or defeated, which is a common theme that I've noticed in many of my students. So we had a really good discussion. This was a question that I used a couple weeks ago, and we had great discussion and helpful comments. Other times we do more of a lighthearted question. And other times we do a bit of a show and tell. Believe it or not, high schoolers love this. Show and tell is not just for elementary schools. Look at me, Na's nodding, yes. Show and tell is not just for elementary kiddos in this world. And so I've done plant edition, I've done pet edition, food edition, and it really helps make them feel like they belong in a world where they don't always get access to that anymore. So that's it. Those are my 2 strategies. I'm happy to answer any questions or pass it on to a colleague. I'm not sure what the order is.
We may have a few moments at the end, Giselle, for them to ask some questions of all 3 of you, if you can hang on just a bit. And thank you so much. What incredible social justice grounding within your content area there and bringing out student voices. So I appreciate you taking the time to illustrate the social emotional learning piece as well. We're going to head to Nicole Carter, who teaches science at Evergreen Middle School. Thanks, Nicole.
Sorry, 1 second while I get my screen. There we go. All right. Good evening, and thank you for having me here. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm Nicole Carter, and I teach 6th grade science at Evergreen Middle School. In middle school, we work hard to give our students a solid academic skill set. And in 6th grade science at Evergreen, we're focused on science literacy and building thinkers and future citizens. To be successful in our focus, we must focus on our language learners. To us, all students are academic language learners, meaning they're all building academic vocabulary, learning to read, write, communicate, and process information like scientists. On top of that, some of our students are learning English for the first time, and others have spoken English their entire lives, but struggle with these elements of language and literacy. So in our perspective, language acquisition and science literacy are areas all of our students need support in. Normally, we're equipped with many strategies to support all these types of language learners, but many of these strategies are built around being face-to-face with students. So how do we work around this? We found a few tools to help. The first is WeVideo. With WeVideo, we can record ourselves talking about a topic, a phenomenon, or concepts, and then infuse it with text, images, and videos. Why is this helpful? For starters, vocabulary. From mitochondria to precipitation, we build their vocabulary constantly. To learn a new word, students must interact with that word, see it, hear it, read it, write it, or say it 60 to 80 times before it becomes part of their vocabulary. As you can see here, we add text to the video while we're saying the word, showing images of the word, giving examples of the word. And this helps students to learn it faster, remember it longer, recognize it when they read, and pronounce it properly. Why do we care if they can pronounce it properly? If you can't say it, you can't read it, and you can't remember it. It also helps to make our thinking visible. I've often wished that I could let students see inside my head and see what I was visualizing while discussing a phenomenon or how various concepts connect, and now I can. It also allows us to use a strategy called pictorial input charts, and this is an example of one that I made on the water cycle. It's a strategy we learned with GLAD and PSYOP, where you show a process or a system by drawing it and talking about it. Then you go back the next day and talk through it again, this time adding real pictures, because adding real life images, not just cartoons and sketches, is powerful in learning language and concepts. Normally in a classroom, we do this in the front of the room with our chart paper, and we have little printed out pictures, we add real images, and these are at best hard to see. But seeing my tiny little square in your Zoom screen, now trying to add a tiny little picture, it's just not gonna work. But with WeVideo, every student gets a front row seat, and we can superimpose actual footage onto things, or of things, excuse me, onto the screen and make these pictorial input charts come to life. This means that this part of our instruction is asynchronous. And this is important because asynchronous means that it's accessible to all students all of the time, over and over again. This is an equity piece. We have students who need to hear it over and over. They can pause us, rewind us, skip over parts they understood, and go over parts they struggled with as many times as they need to, whenever they have time to do it. We have students whose internet is spotty, whose power goes out, who spend the day in loud, chaotic environments, who have to help their parents do things and can't make it to class, or who simply oversleep, or don't have the courage yet to speak up and ask us to repeat something in front of the whole class. This levels the playing field and eliminates all of those barriers. And even when a student worked really hard but forgot what they learned the past week, they can just go back and press play and refresh their brains on what they already learned. So whoever was responsible for giving us access to WeVideo, thank you. Another tool that we've found very useful is narration in Google Slides. We've built many of our assignments in Google Slides, and so most of our instructions, questions, and readings are housed here. We then record ourselves reading the text from each slide so that each slide is narrated. If they want to, students can click on the little speaker icon, listen, and read along with us. This is helpful for those that struggle with reading, those that don't like to read, or who are auditory processors, and make sure more students have access to the instructions, questions, and readings we do in class. With these two tools, we are attempting to make learning more accessible to all students and support our language learners as they grow each day in their science literacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. What powerful examples of accessibility and making academic vocabulary come to life in leveraging this technology. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet Kim, you're up next.
Hi.
Thank you.
When I was asked to do this presentation on student engagement, I really thought about how I like to even the playing field for kids who have spotty internet, kids who want to show their thinking immediately and try to give them immediate feedback. So one of the engagement tools that fourth grade at Cedarwood really enjoy using is something called Jamboard, which is an online Google platform. And it's where students can collaborate together just on one board, and they're able to show their thinking through different ways, whether it's on a Post-it note, whether it's through a pen, whether they want a whiteboard marker, and then they upload an image. And we use Jamboard through all our subject areas. So I picked Jamboard to represent what we do in every single subject area because it's elementary school. So I'm just going to go through my slides and show you how we show engagement even through social and emotional learning. We ask the kids, what they're thankful for before they went off to Thanksgiving break, and kids were able to put up what they're thankful for, what their thoughts were, and other kids were able to open up the discussion on Zoom chat and ask probing questions to other kids' Post-it notes. So it really did open up that idea of, I can put my thoughts out there, but I also can answer questions through chat as well. In math, we did a really, really amazing notice and wonder by trying to figure out what prime and composites were. So students were able to give me numbers and I categorized them. And it was just an exploration of what color they thought their number went into. And they would have to tell me the color through chat or through just opening up discussion. Other kids would either agree or disagree. And they were trying to discover the rule of what makes a number prime versus what makes a number composite. And then what I was able to do through all the discussion, about 15 minutes of kids just being highly engaged because they were trying to discover to see if their rule was valid by seeing if the color was justified. We actually went in and tried to clarify what prime and composites were by I asked them, what do they notice about the numbers and what do they wonder? And that's going to take us to that next day of really digging a little deeper to see if their notice and wonders really come true. And then I can enhance their wonders. And from there, we were able to make our own rules for prime and composite. So I really, really like Jamboard just because we're able to, it's colorful, the kids are highly engaged, the kids are able to write up their thoughts, and I'm able to give them immediate feedback at all times. In addition, when I put them out in breakout rooms, kids are able to show me their thinking they thought about when we were doing factors and arrays. They were showing me their different work through drawings. They were showing me through a factor T-chart, and they were just trying to explain their work. And so it just shows me immediately that I'm able to go to each breakout room, but I'm actually able to see that they're actually discussing within their breakout room as well. Then in writing or in reading, we do daily read alouds. And so our daily read alouds, we like to just have them give us feedback to what they're hearing, what they're asking for. So we asked them just to collect information on a nonfiction character, or I'm sorry, a nonfiction puppeteer. And it was related to the Macy's parade and how he made all the big balloons. And so as I'm doing the read aloud, they are actually writing down what their wows were, what they learned, what they thought was very, very interesting. So these are just a couple of those samples about how they were engaged during that learning. And it also gives me feedback that they are understanding the story. So there's quite a few that the students thought were very interesting. A lot of kids didn't know about the big balloons, nor did they understand about the parade. So that just brought everyone together. Then for our reach unit, this one is a different Jamboard because I put their numbers up so I can see what tradition that each child allocated without having their name. So it gives them a safe environment because students don't know which number belongs to which child, but I do. So I can ask deeper questions about each student's tradition and about what they celebrate. For writing, we also use Jamboard to start talking about descriptive language for our introductory paragraphs. So we were focused on rivers and animals. And so right now we're talking about all the descriptive language that we've learned from the articles, and we're putting them in here so then the kids have a better resource when they go back to starting to write their rough draft, that they can come back to this material and be able to pull from everybody's brain about what everyone was thinking about. And the great thing about Jamboard too, in this example, is I can go into I can just see each person's Jamboard, each group's Jamboard, and see what they're discussing, and it's accessible to all children as well. So if one child is looking for a descriptive word and smell, they don't have to stick to their own Jamboard, but they can actually go and scroll to group 3's Jamboard and see what descriptive language they had, or group 4. So it really brings the kids together, and it makes them feel like they're in a small group, like they would be in class in their small little groups that they're discussing. And then it would be like putting it out on the walls of poster paper so that they can just cruise across the room and use what they need. The other thing we like to do is read articles that we know we're going to use for informational writing. And we collected data. So we're collecting facts. So that this one is about the elephant communication because we're focused on animals. We have paws coming in. We just completed our Shiloh CIA. So the students are really, really learning about different types of animals, different characteristics. And so now they pick their own animal groups, and now they are gathering information for that on a Jamboard. And then I save it as a PDF, and then I put it out as kind of a poster paper for students to access. So those are all the areas where we use Jamboard that I feel like it levels the playing field for kids. Kids can have constant discussions about it. They can ask each other questions, but most importantly, that everyone can hear each other, even if their internet is kind of spotty, but they're able to contribute to everyone's group.
Thanks, Janet. Absolutely. President Mason, I didn't know if you wanted to pause here to interact with these folks just for a brief amount of time, or how would you like to handle that?
Sure, I think that would be great to give directors an opportunity if they have any comments or questions for what we've seen. This, I have to say, I don't know how the teachers are selected, but you bring us some really great ones, and the themes and the variety is really outstanding. So I just want to say thank you very much, because it's really increasing our breadth of knowledge of how online learning looks right now. Directors, does anyone else have a comment or question?
I'd like to go, but
yeah, Pam, go ahead.
I'm really impressed by this. This is just fantastic work you guys are doing. And what I like most of all is you put the social emotional learning aspect of it in first, asking kids, how are you doing? How do you feel? What, What are your challenges with the, excuse me, with the rose? You know, what's good, what's bad, what's a thorn, what's, you know, I really am impressed. I am so impressed. This is amazing. From Giselle, when you started talking about the actual subject matter in your class, and then going through the current events of today, the social emotional justice, the morality aspect of it all. That is wonderful. And thank you so much for what you've done. Nicole, when you started talking about asynchronous learning, I don't remember a time when I didn't also engage in asynchronous learning, when I used my phone and went on YouTube to figure out how to fix something that's broken in my house. You know, I have to go back and go over it again and again to figure out, wait a minute, what was that screw? What was the arrangement to get it back in after I've taken something apart? Kids need that, and that's great that they are learning how to do that, and they can go back and find out how to do that. And actually, your video, I mean, are all the teachers using that in science, or how did you find out about this? And are you sharing it amongst your colleagues and the things that you can do to be able to put the video on top of the video, and et cetera, et cetera? That's amazing.
That is something we all, it's in our Canvas suite. So I don't know who the genius was to give it to us, but whoever it is, thank you. And I can only speak to my 6th grade teaching partner. We work very closely together. But beyond that, I don't know what others do, because we are so constrained for time that we're kind of in our world right now.
And especially going in with science. Science is so important. And science, you really need to see those things and put them together. But it can work out with math. It can work out with English and language arts. It can work out with everything. Fantastic. And Janet, the Jamboard, I am impressed. That is a tool that I am very, very glad we're using, and you're using it and engaging all your kids, because what they say matters, you know, how they feel about things or how they wonder about things, and their ability to see what other kids are also saying too matters. Thank you. But this is really great. Giselle, I am so impressed with your class. I'd like to, once hopefully this is all over, I'd like to sit in on your Spanish classes. I really would. You know, hopefully I can engage in the Spanish classes at Emerson when we get in that direction. But I do hope to, you know, bring back some of my Spanish that I know I've forgotten over the years. But all of you, fantastic, and I'm impressed. I am truly impressed with what you're offering our students. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. I just want to say thank you too. I concur with Caroline that we have, I believe in this district, the best teachers. You are all working so hard, and I'm just so thankful for those that keep coming to speak to us month after month. So thank you for finding the best of the best of the best of the best. And I just love this. Every single time we do this, just the technology that we're using now that can go into back into the live classroom. And I just keep seeing examples of that. And then you each had something very powerful to say, but Nicole, your statement about needing to hear and read something 80 times, I think is what you said. I work for a company that likes making up new words, and they like having cues that don't have U's after them. So you have to hear it and say 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 it. But then when I was in pharmacy school, I had a classmate that was asked a question, and she said, so how do we compromise? Or she actually said compromise. And we all looked at her, we're like, compromise? What kind of word is compromise? I don't think she'd ever heard and said compromise. And I was like, how do you become an adult? But whatever her circumstances were, she was not English second language, but I will always remember, if you phonetically see the word compromise, it looks like compromise. And that's why, like you said, you have to see it and you have to say it. So thank you so much. Even in Zoom, you have to see it and you have to say it.
I just wanted to thank all of the teachers. I was like overwhelmed with how amazing all of you are. And just a couple of quick notes. So Giselle, you just knocked it out of the park. We are a family of language learners. So my freshman who's in French 3 is also in Spanish 2. So she will eventually be in Spanish 4 sooner or later. And I can't wait to tell her about your presentation, because it would just be right up her alley, and it might be a way to convince her to take the AP test, unlike her sister, when she gets there. So thank you so much for that presentation. Nicole, I just can't thank you enough. I have never actually sat and thought about the intersection between asynchronous learning and equity. So I took some pretty thorough notes on your presentation, because the way you summed it up was spot on. I'll be sharing that with colleagues, throughout the district, just because it is something we need to talk about, the importance of asynchronous learning and how we're doing it and why it relates directly to equity, and also the digital deserts that we have. Both you and Janet, I think, summed it up really well about the spottiness, because we talk about getting our kids broadband and having them have access, but both of you touched on that it's spotty, right? Because we've got mom and dad and grandma and grandpa, everybody's working at home. So even if we provided them this amazing service, it might not be what they need when they need it. So thank you for putting that together. That was really great. And then Janet, thank you so much, because you're rocking and rolling at elementary school, and that's a hard job. But I think the way you used Jamboard was wonderful, because you used it in each subject matter. And I know for those little elementary learners, having the consistency of a program like that, so they know what they're getting when they're getting it, is huge. So I can't thank the three of you enough for the presentation. I learned so much.
And I don't think, I don't think I could say it any better than
I know,
any of
they
that,
kind of
but-
summarized it pretty well, huh?
Yeah, so just again, my sincerest gratitude for all of you choosing to be in this profession and doing all the hard work that you do. Your efforts do not go unnoticed, and thank you very much for taking your time to be with us tonight.
Any further comments before we move on? Okay, I just want to thank the three of you for being here with us this evening, and I'll turn it back over to Dr. Scott.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Janet. Thanks, Nicole and Giselle. Just in credit to Sally, Jeannie, and Larry, and the principals that that support the schools that these teachers teach at, for nominating. Absolutely incredible nominations. So thank you so much for that, and credit where credit is due for the running list of fantastic teachers to showcase. That's a hard act to follow, Kathy and Brian, but we're gonna try to do our best here. Kathy, is the slideshow up? I forgot. There it is. Okay. So at the last update in late October, we mentioned that while we have student attendance in the 96 to 98% range, we know that these are limited proxies for engagement. And by that, I mean that they are evidence of students' daily participation, but don't provide as much information as we would like on student engagement. So establishing and sustaining engagement has been a central theme at our instructional reviews and continues to be a top priority for our principals and teachers. And so Brian Beckley is going to discuss some steps we've taken to leverage technology tools to assist with this, to better draw out engagement. Brian?
Yes, thank you. So here on this page is a couple of views I want to highlight. This is using one of our district tools called Insight. It's a tool that we can create different filters and views for staff. And we've been working with our secondary principals as a result of our instructional reviews, as Dr. Scott mentioned, to add some filters and tools and views in Insight that can give them a more detailed view other than just our students attending, so that we can dig deeper and address where that attendance measure data falls short. So there's two views here. The first view shows attendance trends with overall daily attendance alongside the number of missing assignments, and look at the daily attendance each day of that month. And they can toggle between kind of a month view. And there's one student per line. And so we've blocked out the student names, of course, but you can kind of see how they could identify through different filters the ones that they might be concerned about. And that's the second view, which is a more detailed view that for each student, there's multiple lines for each course they're enrolled in. And that is one course per line that shows the overall daily attendance alongside absence from that course, as well as assignments for that course, and those that are marked missing in that course, as well as the letter grade. So it digs a little bit deeper into mirroring and working alongside what their attendance with missing assignments and with grades, both at a month view, but also by a course view. And so they'll start to use those filters and tools using Insight to give them more information to support students that might be failing but attending for various reasons.
So at our last update, we were excited to report that we had over 100 professional development sessions at our October Learning Improvement Day. And these were largely led by staff in 4 central priority areas. We call them anchors. So equitable outcomes, best instructional practices in remote learning, learning management system tools like Canvas, for example, and social emotional learning. And in November, we were thrilled to be able to establish a digital library of these resources so that staff could revisit them on their own time and related to their areas of interest. And so in effect, the power of that Learning Improvement Day could kind of live on, so to speak. Brian?
So here I'm sharing some updates. You've seen the updates with Canvas, but I've added Remind and Seesaw, which we fully rolled out in October. And so looking at October and November stats there. But looking at first with Canvas over the first 3 months of remote learning, and you can see the number of credentials for parent Canvas credentials is trending down. But what we have found is that in many cases, parents are using the app form and they're not logging out. The app is staying logged in all the time. And so that's the number of unique logins. That's the data that we pull. So if a parent stays logged in, it will only show up once. And also we have parents that are signing up for notifications. So if a parent signs up for notifications, they get alerts and they don't have to log in and get the information. It comes to them. So they don't necessarily need to continue to access that as a login. And in addition, of course, November was a little bit of a shorter month. So these are not surprising stats for us and some trends we're seeing as parents continue to stay connected. Another way they stay connected is Remind, and Remind was fully rolled out in October as a district outreach tool for communication with our families. This is its first 2 months of use. You can see the number of active staff users, the number of accounts, the number of messages sent. And what this tells us is that more of our interaction is happening with our families in those conversations and reactions. That's two-way communication. The announcements are those blasts of information that get sent out from staff, which is happening quite a bit, but you're seeing a lot more with the interaction piece. So that's really encouraging. And there is the snapshot of the first 2 months with Seesaw. And that again is that augmentation for our kindergarten and first grade students to Canvas. It's a little more elementary friendly. Also in our technology support, one of the updates I want to mention is we've completed all of the Wi-Fi access points and switch upgrades. So all of our schools now have updated Wi-Fi and updated switches. So we are fully ready once we're all back with all students attending, that our schools won't have any more dead zones or any more dead spots within the school. So that's an exciting thing to celebrate this past month. Our number of computers and hotspots is held pretty steady. Our number of work orders and incidents is steadily declining. We have found a lot of help desk. Our staff on site and our teachers are actually providing a lot of tier 1 help desk support. So that's pretty exciting as we build our capacity to self-help with our students and our parents. Our top help desk continues to be Zoom, especially recently we updated for authentication to ensure safety with Zoom. So some people have struggles with that. And we're in the process of working with our students to update their password. So that's a frequent call from parents and students needing help with that.
So we remain hopeful that we will be able to bring back our 4 special education programs in January as part of stage 2. And again, these are programs in students who are not as well served by the remote learning model and who stand to benefit from greater in-person experiences. So this is our developmental pre-kindergarten, developmental kindergarten, life skills classrooms, K-12, and our Strive program, who serves 18 to 21 year olds. So in total, there's about 250 students in the second stage. And our factors for reentry are similar to those in future elementary grade stages, which are at a high level, which are health numbers from local and state officials and the coordination and adjustment of staffing to accommodate parent and student desires to either attend in person or remain in remote learning. And that's, go ahead and switch the slide, Kathy. That's a similar set of reentry criteria for future stages 3 and 4 as well, but with way larger numbers as we factor in about 1,400 students per grade level and factor returning to school in a hybrid fashion. So you can see here the AAXBB proposed schedule where groups of students would return for 2 days, either in an A group or a B group, with Wednesday being that C or X day. Those are interchangeable letters. In the middle of the week for cleaning and support with the transition between groups. The non-in-person days would be asynchronous, which is directed independent student learning. And of course, health guidelines again play an important role here as we monitor the numbers. We've done extensive analysis of classroom capacities and responses to the family survey where families were asked to provide us their preferences for hybrid or 100% remote, which sets into motion significant planning by principals. And this is going on right now, planning around balancing class sizes and reassessing staff assignments with special attention paid to trying to minimize transitions as much as possible. Many families express the desire to ensure the continuity of instruction and preserve that classroom connection. Did we lose our PowerPoint?
Yes,
You
I
did.
did.
Good. Okay, I'll keep going. For secondary schools, we've reached a tentative agreement with the association on providing an asynchronous day built into the work week for middle and high school teachers and students. And the purpose of this time is for teachers to plan, evaluate student work, collaborate with their colleagues, and consistent time would be built into the day for principals and leadership teams to engage in professional development that's timely, relevant, responsive to the teacher's academic and social emotional needs arising from remote instruction. And we anticipate more information forthcoming midweek this week about this asynchronous day at secondary. Kathy, I'll pause here. Do we have the PowerPoint? I will keep going.
She's not on.
I think we lost
She's not
Kathy.
on. I think she
Yeah.
might. Okay.
Here, I'll try to bring it up.
Oh, thanks, Brian. So if you recall the Let's Connect meeting on November 16th, which the regionals led very skillfully. I believe that was the third in a series. I think we've done 5 since, sorry, 5 total, but 2 since November 16th. And they asked 3 prompts. And the focus of the prompts was around parent engagement. And the prompts were what type of activities would parents like to be engaged? How could we better connect with families during these times? What support do you need as you support your child's remote learning? And the themes that emerged were reflective of our strong community values. We've heard that tonight in many ways. Parents want to be engaged in school service projects. They want to help other parents service resources. Like all of us, they want to feel connected. And on a technical level, they want to help their kids better access course content in the learning management systems, especially during asynchronous learning segments of the school day. Lastly, thanks, Brian. We're right at the health piece. Lastly, I wanted to next one. I wanted to reiterate, there you go, thank you. Reiterate that we continue to build out our student and staff safety protocols and our handbooks You can see the kind of the table of contents there. They contain as many answers to FAQs as we have. And one recent development that we're excited about is the introduction of an app accessible on any device, cell phone, computer, that allows staff to attest to their health status daily instead of having to sign in daily, attesting at their work site. So we've really appreciated, and that's been in the last 7 to 10 days or so that we've had that app in place. We've really appreciated, and we want to expand its reach. We've really appreciated this development because of the efficiency that it provides.
Sorry, I'm back.
Just in time. I think this is.
Yeah. It just said unknown error, so I can't even tell you what went wrong. So in the last couple presentations, we've talked about how we've done for external communications, and I wanted to make sure that you guys understood the extent of some of the internal communications that we've been doing as well. So one of the things that we do is make sure that all of the staff are aware why we make the decisions that we're making, and that includes what some of the current health stats are and just the process that we go through for making some of the decisions we make. And also, most recently, one of the things we've put out is what to do if a staff or a student tests positive or has symptoms of COVID. So even though there's not a lot of students in our buildings right now, if a student tests positive and they came and picked up a Chromebook or they did something like that, we still need to know that. And a big part of what we're doing for staff right now is the contact tracing. So even though the health department takes care of all of the contact tracing for positive cases outside of the school, if we have a positive case that happens inside the school, we are responsible to do all of the contact tracing for the health department for anyone who was within our building and let them know when the different exposures happened. So myself and Rondi Seberg in HR and Carrie Johnson, who is our nurse manager, we're the responsible ones for doing that contact tracing. So if someone finds out they have a positive test, they contact one of us, and we make sure that the health department has all the things that they need, as well as people know how long they have to quarantine if they've been exposed. And then the next slide, you can see this is one of the documents we put together, which you can't see because it's really tiny there. But it's in the board presentation. This is just one of the things that we put together, and you're going to be surprised at this, to simplify the process. So there's so many ifs, ands, and what ifs that we put this together to help people follow. So I don't have symptoms, but I was around someone that did, and they were positive here. So what can I do, and when can I return to the building? This is just one of the several different flow charts we put together to help people understand the impacts of their exposure or their symptoms and when that means they might be able to come back to work. And we have a similar one already created for students as well once students get back into the building. So those are just two examples of things that we are doing for communications, and that is the end. And I'm very sorry that I dropped off in the middle.
No worries. These things happen these days. Thank you all for your input and presentation. I'm going to start with questions tonight because I was impressed. So I was in the Everett High School IR, and I remember Principal Overly saying that she really needed some better tools to help understand engagement of her students, not just whether they're showing up for a short time and what that looks like. And here we are several weeks later, and you're presenting to us this awesome ability to look at students with missing assignments and how it correlates to their attendance and their grades. And I think that's going to be a very powerful tool for middle and high schools to be able to really assess which students are in most need of extra help and a little outreach as well. So kudos to you and your team and whoever did that. That's awesome. My other question is also for you, Brian, is What is our help desk response time looking like? I know it was sort of overwhelming in the beginning and we were a bit slow getting back and resolving. How are we doing now that there's a bit of a rhythm to some of this?
Yeah, we're able to get to the calls right away. There was a time at the beginning where people were on hold for quite a bit, but we're able to get to the calls right away. And so our response is really within the 1 to 2 day range, within 24 to 48 hours to resolve a ticket, but we're able to actually respond. Like they can get a hold of a live person the day that they call. And then and because of that, they're able to respond to the work order tickets if they should send them something. So they're able to, every day we look at the metrics about how much is left over at the end of the day, with the goal of 48 hours to resolve a ticket and make sure we've gotten back to the parent or the student or the teacher, since all three groups. So that has gotten considerably better.
Great, thank you for that update. Directors or student representatives, do you have other questions or comments, feedback?
Can I just ask one question about that COVID little chart? Is that what is that something we had to create? Is that something the state provided? Is that something the CDC provided? Or
it's based off the state guidelines, and it's a mock-up that I took from another district and modified it to fit our situation and our branding, but it's all based off the state guidelines that the Snohomish County Health District has adopted.
Okay, so like the days and times and touch
Yeah.
and everything. Okay, yeah, I think I was like, I believed it was adequately sourced and correct, but it's like, I really hope we're not having to recreate. Every district is having to do this by themselves. So I appreciate your talent, but we are just not getting enough support for all of this stuff that we're having to do. And I just, again, want to thank everyone. These are unprecedented times. We know that students need to be in the classroom, but until we can get things under control, I just really appreciate all your support.
I just like to say, Brian Beckley, thank you very much for that one remote learning tool. That is awesome. That is something that really answers the question for me when I said, how do we know they're engaged? Even though their screen may be on, how do we know that they're actually doing their work? That is a very good tool. Thank you so much for your team. Whoever put it together, it's just awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I just want to jump in and join the Brian Beckley fan club at this point. That is an awesome way to use data analytics and to be able to look at data in new ways. I'm not sure if we're the only district manipulating data in that way, but thank you for doing it, because to Director Liston's point, it helps answer that question, right? Not just are they showing up, checking the box, but are they actually getting their work in, and are they actually achieving what they need to in the class? The other thing is, slight confession, I may or may not be one of those parents that does not log into Canvas. I'm just putting it out there. So if there are parents like that out there, I just want to thank you for offering multiple ways for us to check up on our kiddos. And also there's another bucket of parent, not just the ones on the apps, but it's the ones like me that look over their shoulders to look at it. And so I feel like we should get brownie points for that. But thank you for making Canvas so robust, because even one of the teachers previously said she had a Canvas suite, and just hearing her use that word, a Canvas suite that she had access to, I thought, yes, we've made it. So thank you, Brian Beckley and your whole team.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, hearing no other inquiries, I'm going to thank the team again for the update. We greatly appreciate it, and better understanding how this whole dynamic is shifting and changing in our district. So we'll look forward to seeing you again after the new year. So with that, we are going to move on to our other information and discussion topic, which is School Resource Officer Program Update. And I believe Peter Scott is back with us here. You're muted, Peter.
Oops, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Could I get a quick thumbs up if you could see a full screen there?
Thumbs
Okay,
up.
thank you. Perfect. So good evening again. Thanks for the opportunity to share a school resource officer update. Our goal tonight is to provide a high-level overview of the school resource officer, or the commonly known as SROs, in our district, specifically relating to the roles of the SRO, both in pre-COVID closure times and during COVID closure, training and other requirements established by statute that are to be in place during the 2021 school year, and then some information on costs of the program. We're also going to provide some important feedback from the Let's Connect community session back on November 23rd, which wasn't very long ago, and provide some recommended next steps, in large part responsive to that feedback. So it's my pleasure to introduce folks that have hung on this phone call for a while now, and I appreciate them hanging in there. Sergeant Jeff Pontaine, Youth Services Unit Supervisor from the Everett Police Department, Sergeant Stan White from the Mill Creek Police Department, and Captain Keith Rogers from the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office. And Sergeant Pontaine, Sergeant White, and Captain Rogers are fantastic partners in this work, and I want to thank them for being here this evening. And I'd like them to introduce the names of their SROs, if they would, please, on this slide, starting with Sergeant Pontaine.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks again for everyone allowing us this opportunity. Many of you know me. I'm Sergeant Jeff Pontaine, Everett Police Department, and I currently, well, I should be supervising in a normal school year 6 SROs, 5 that are assigned to the Everett School District. Officer Shea Alexander's been at North Middle School, and he's been with us for 11 years. Officer John Coates is at Eisenhower. He's been with us for 2 years. And Officer Aaron DeFolo, he's over at Evergreen Middle. He's been with us for 9 years. Officer Doug Jackson's at Cascade. He's been with us for 6 years. And Officer Brett Stewart's at Everett High. He's been with us for 8 years. And both Jackson and Stewart are currently working as SROs during this COVID closure. The rest of them have been reassigned to patrol for now.
Sergeant White, you want to introduce your folks? Oh, I think you are muted. No, unfortunately not. I'm just going to keep rolling, Sergeant White. If just cut me off if you've got audio. Sergeant White is a key partner. He's actually a parent in our district as well. He supervises SRO Josh Saga from Jackson High School and Todd Bridgman at Heatherwood Middle School. And again, the ones highlighted in orange are currently serving our schools in COVID closure. Stan, are you on just to say hello? Yeah, sorry, we can't hear you. Sorry about that. Captain Rogers, you want to introduce your SRO? And
sure. Deputy Ian McCulloch is at Gateway Middle, and he also covers some of the elementary schools out in that region. I think it's 5 elementary schools. We're trying to get our sergeant back online, as we have 2 other school districts that are working in the hybrid model. And so we're excited about that. I just learned about that this afternoon, that we're going to try to get a new sergeant in line after losing Sergeant Craig White to retirement. So I'm excited because I'll have someone to attend late meetings like these. So that'll be exciting for me.
Captain Rogers, I don't know if you mentioned that you helped support 8 SROs in over 8 districts.
Yeah, it's 8 SROs in 6 school districts that we oversee, along with our other contract partners.
Great. Thank you 3 for being here. Really appreciate it. Sergeant Pontaine, I'm going to have you take the next few.
Okay, thank you. The functions of the SRO are to improve school safety and the educational climate by developing a positive relationship with not just the students, but the parents and the staff, as well as district staff as well. One of our roles is to protect the students and the staff, and at the same time provide a safe and inclusive learning environment for all the students. All of our SOs are trained and do participate in school-based threat assessments. We act as a resource for the teachers, the parents, and the students to meet with to discuss individual issues or problems. We also assist the school administrators with student safety and investigations, including using the district security camera system. And this is primarily for investigative purposes, not monitoring in any way. We serve as a resource to the students, the parents, and the school staff on topics such as alcohol and drug trends, gang activity, social media and internet safety, and neighborhood safety issues as well. And finally, we help to keep the students out of the juvenile justice system. Unique times. We are now working in a COVID, like I mentioned earlier, we have 2 SROs for Everett assigned during this COVID closure. So what we're doing now is we're working with staff and counselors on child welfare contexts. We've done several of those so far. We've worked with some of our partners, for example, Housing Hope, to go out and check on some families and some students that might be going through some rough times right now. We act as a resource for teachers and parents and students to meet to discuss their individual issues and problems, much like we do in a normal school year. The school and neighborhood online threat assessments, they still exist. If need be, we're there to meet with a threat assessment team. Campus safety investigations. The SROs that are assigned right now are actually covering the entire school district. So all of the properties, not just the schools, but all of the properties. They're checking in with staff on a daily basis to see if there's anything we need to know about. I myself, on my way to work, I'll do campus checks and check with schools on my way to work. And so we're kind of spread out throughout the entire district. Again, we serve as a resource to students, parents, and school staff on topics like alcohol and drug trends, gang activity. So much like a normal school year, we're still there for that resource. And we help students, the idea is to keep them out of the juvenile justice system. So if there's other resources that we can work with to help them keep them out of any type of justice system, that's a main goal. You know, we adhere to the NASRO triad, and that's part of it. And then we also do a patrol response to the neighborhood, meaning that all the officers or the SROs, they're paying attention, they're listening to the radio, they're assisting patrol officers in the area, and making sure that the area around the school is safe for everybody.
I want to talk a little bit about, thanks, Jeff. I want to talk a little bit about the SRO's relationship with admin and the school community. School principals have the primary responsibility for maintaining a safe climate and culture at the school. And the SRO program, we wanted to be clear that the program or any SRO cannot be used to impose criminal sanctions in matters that are more appropriately handled within the district by administrators. And that sounds like some official language, and it is. It's right out of the statute. The law prohibits SROs from extending into formal discipline situations that are the responsibility of school administrators. Wanted just to really draw out that importantly, SROs are part of the fabric of the school. They're integrated in the school community like a staff member. In a typical year, SROs attend functions during the school day. They participate in class and club presentations. As an example, in many cases, to demystify law enforcement as a career and ask and develop relationships with students. Training requirements. I know this is a text-heavy slide, but we felt it was important for you to see the exact language in the statute again. This recent legislation requires SROs to be trained in these areas. So this is about SROs comprehensively understanding constitutional and civil rights of children, child and adolescent development, trauma-informed practices, recognizing and responding to youth and mental health issues. I won't read all of these, but alternatives to arrest, local and national disparities, de-escalation techniques when working with youth, state laws regarding restraint and isolation, understanding bias, particularly as it relates to cultural competency in working with students from diverse backgrounds, and privacy requirements, of course. Requirements, several other important requirements to be established this school year. One is an annual SRO agreement review process that involves parents, students, and community members. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a later slide as far as a next step. The second is establishing a complaints process, which we've done in Procedure 4410. And thirdly, an annual collection and reporting of data regarding calls for law enforcement that include a few things. The outcome of these calls, including student arrest and referral for prosecution. Again, that's right out of the language of the RCW. This is a process that's been established within our information database so that it can be disaggregated by the multiple demographics and by school, and the things that you see there in the last bullet. One of the questions we've received around this topic of SROs is, to what extent do we currently have other safety related personnel on campus? And I wanted to highlight campus security officers, or CSOs, here. So we have 2 CSOs per comprehensive high school, 1 per middle school and alternative high school, Sequoia. And their roles are to improve overall school safety and educational climate, act as a resource for teachers, parents, and students. They assist school admin with safety investigations, and like Jeff said, including using the district security camera system for any investigations. They don't monitor that on a regular ongoing basis, only during investigations, and assisting with general campus supervision, entries, exits of large buildings. SRO program costs. Recall at the outset of this presentation, the SRO supervisors they mentioned who was currently serving our schools during COVID-related closures. And so we currently have 2 SROs in Everett, 1 serving at Everett High School and its feeder pattern, and 1 serving at Cascade and its feeder pattern, one Mill Creek SRO serving Jackson High School and its feeder pattern. The total cost to the district for this school year is just about $370,000. The district has a preliminary budget for the 21-22 school year of about $600,000, assuming schools will be fully open and running at full student capacity. And so this supports the salaries and benefits of 5 SROs, and they're all highlighted here in orange. The city of Everett has historically financially supported SROs at our 3 middle schools in Everett, as well as the youth services unit supervisor, and all of those pieces here are highlighted in gray. We were really excited to launch the Let's Connect community discussion forum regarding the program on November 23rd. And we advertised this widely in very, very similar ways than previous Let's Connects in using those same tools and resources through email, social media, our main website, on our school's websites. We had 54 community members participate, which included 12 breakout group sessions. And those breakouts were facilitated by either a high school or a middle school principal, with an assistant principal as a note taker. The prompts were broad so as to generate as much discussion as possible. And you can see those prompts there. What perspectives would you like to share about the program? And given what you know about the program, what questions do you have? What questions outstanding do you have? Here are some themes, and they were very interesting themes. Overall, the community feedback thematically was quite positive and reflected a recognitions that SROs play an important prevention and response role in major crises. Again, these are themes that arose from the evening. They are adept at building positive relationships. They're professional and helpful. Their presence in schools represents an important opportunity to change perceptions of law enforcement, and their presence serves as a deterrent. That there's a perception that their presence serves as a deterrent to major issues occurring. There was also a clear theme around ensuring that we listen to all voices, especially students who may feel unsafe or less than safe or vulnerable around law enforcement, particularly in light of recent national events. There was feedback around surfacing to what extent are SROs necessary relative to the costs of the program, relative to other helpful personnel like counselors or social workers, mental health providers, and CSOs. The diversity of SROs was a question some folks had, emphasizing the importance of SROs who reflect the diversity and experiences of our students. And lastly, the theme of expressing the importance of including SROs as part of a larger conversation about building healthy and positive adult-student relationships in our schools. As far as next steps go, and again, this important community feedback helped inform our next steps. In February, we plan on convening students, parents, and community members as part of the annual SRO agreement review process. And the purpose there is to glean feedback on the next iterations of the relationship with our SROs in that spirit of continuous improvement and openness. And we're also actively considering adding survey items for grades 6 through 12 on our spring panorama social emotional learning survey data, or survey tool instrument rather, so that we can more broadly gather student perspectives regarding SROs. And we want to convene a standing student advisory group as well to inform best practices in our schools. And again, in the vein of strengthening relationships and understanding. And so now we'd like to invite your discussion and any questions that you might have. And again, want to thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Sergeant Pontaine and Sergeant White and Captain Rogers for being here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scott, and to our presenters. I'm going to just go ahead. If you could pull the presentation down, that would be helpful. And I'll go ahead and just open it up to student representatives or directors for questions or comments.
Oh, if I
Go ahead. Go ahead, Amina.
So this summer I had the opportunity to talk to the Everett Public School District, high school people of color, basically. And while we were talking about it, everyone kind of expressed the same feel for law enforcement. And this was, I would say, maybe when everything was kind of in high rise in the country. So for one, I just don't feel, so like walking off the bus going to school and a police officer's face is the first thing you see isn't really safe, if that makes any sense. And also to build a better relationship. And I just wanted to say this because this is how most of the students of color at Everett and at the Everett Public School District feel. For making a relationship with students, I don't think it's going to be beneficial to add even more security or law enforcement into the schools. And if it is beneficial, it's not going to be towards the students of color who have the most skewed vision of law enforcement. And if this is kind of passed and continued, are we aiding racial discrimination in the schools? And if we're doing that, are we aiding the school to prison pipeline? Because that is what it seems like to me in this case.
With three of us here, I'm not sure who you're directing this to. Who would you like to answer?
Oh, it was just something that most of the students of color feel. So I thought it was best to kind of project their feelings to anyone who would like to answer, or if you had any remarks.
Well, Amina, I can take a little bit of that, and I can tell you that just in the past few weeks, we've begun to engage open conversations, kind of like you and I are having right now. And for example, I'm meeting with the Mayor's Youth Advisory Board. We've already met with them recently and going to be meeting with them again next week. And like I've told them, it starts here right now with this open line of communication for you to be able to tell us that. that's very personal, and it's a, you know, that's a personal thought that you just shared with us, and that's what we need to hear. And I want you to know that we are here to listen. And I don't know how much of that's been done in the past, you know, and I want to start now, you know, let's do it, whatever it takes for us to maybe meet on a regular basis or more often with groups to listen to their concerns. You know, I could have a question back to you. When was the last time that you talked to your SRO at your school?
Oh, where I know it's Officer Stewart.
Okay.
Yeah, I say hi to him every day, but it's
Good.
just very, I'm not sure if that would be most beneficial for students of color, especially. So that's what I'm kind of confused on. And if it was for, I guess, people who wanted to build a better relationship with law enforcement,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that's the best idea.
Well, we want to hear what you have to say about it, and all of your peers. We want to hear what they have to say about it, and listen to you. And that's where it really starts, is we have to hear your thoughts to know what, you know, what's going on, because I'm not sure we do listen that often, and it just takes that communication.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Manish, thank you for sharing those thoughts with us as well. I mean, one other quick thing, you mentioned adding SROs. I just wanted to make sure that next year, assuming that we have schools fully in person and running, we wouldn't be adding. We would just be restoring what we had pre-COVID. And I just wanted to mention that as well.
All right.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think our other student representative would also like to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just kind of had some open-ended questions, I guess, about the role of SROs. To my understanding, the main goal of having SROs in our schools is to build that relationship with students and police, which I think that in first discussion might sound like a positive goal, but there are some reservations from a student perspective that I have, and I feel like a lot of other students have. The first of which being, and I understand that the goal right now is to open up these lines of communications and maybe fix some of the things, but that goal in the past has not really ever been expressed. And so even if it should have, gone without saying, how effective are SROs if students did not before understand their purpose? So like, even if we're opening up lines of communication right now, the actual actions of SROs in schools, I imagine, would stay relatively the same. And if it hasn't been effective, or if it hasn't done exactly what we expected it to in the past, how can we expect it to in the future? And then the other question that I had was, and this is a little bit more controversial, I guess, but in a political landscape where the role of police in communities and the actions of police is something that's extremely controversial, how fair is it to expose our students from the age of 11 years old to police and expect them to be building these positive relationships with the police when that might not necessarily be representative of their interactions with police later in life? Especially if they were to move areas and there were different police forces, how fair is it to expose students to one interaction with police when that might not be what they're experiencing in real life? And how is it fair to expect students to build those positive relationships and address it from that perspective without addressing it from the perspective of what can police do to be better for our communities out in the community, and decreasing those negative interactions out in the community without trying to expect students to get positive things out of those interactions inherently just because they respect the police. So I guess that's kind of just where I go with this thought process is, how effective is this and how fair is it to students for this to be our approach to community police interactions? And that's open-ended and really just something to think about. But if someone wants to respond, I'd be open to that too.
I might let one of my colleagues speak.
Sure. I mean, I'll never turn down the opportunity to talk in front of a live, captive audience. So let me weigh in. I really appreciate both of your remarks. You guys are representing your student body very well. Clearly, we hear that message, and you're not the first to voice that message. So I totally appreciate that. If we peel back the onion a little bit about what police work is, it's about public safety. It's about community safety. It's about the safety of the students, the staff at that school. That's our primary function. We mentioned and we highlight some of the specific parts of that, but really our primary role in society as a whole is safety. And so we need to come back to that. And in my profession, we need to come back to what our purpose is. And it's not to this prison to pipeline conversation. That's not what we've experienced in SRO programs. That data is not there for us here. That information may have some roots elsewhere, but in this community, it's just not the case. What we've seen in our experience, our SROs want to be there. They want to be engaged with the staff. They want to be engaged with the student. We have a selection process and then extra training for those officers. So we put our best employees that want to be there working with youth. We don't put officers that have discipline issues, officers that have judgment issues, officers that have had a track record. They're not placed in schools. So we want to be there because if we're not there, the alternative is you're going to see a random police officer in case of an emergency, a random unfamiliar face when someone calls 911. And we think the delivery of our service is better when you know the person, when you're comfortable talking to that person. At least you're able to have that greeting and you know their name, and that is a huge step in at least bridging the start of a conversation. I grew up in this community, but I grew up here well before school resource officers were a thing. So I don't have that student experience that you have, but I do have, growing up here and going through this, the evolution of our population changing, right? We went from a very rural county to now a suburban offset of Seattle. So our population in this region of my agency has changed a lot since I've started. Really, we were kind of farmland at the beginning of this, right? So we're growing with that community. Our agency's growing. These experiences of 2020 have taught us all. And our school resource officers are really at the tip of the spear for us and showing us and my staff, the rest of us, how that's going to work. So what we would ask is the opportunity to serve with you, the opportunity to give us a chance to build some of these bridges. And that's what we're looking forward to, is just an opportunity. The alternative, like I said, is a random response from an unfamiliar police officer. Yes, trained, but not trained to the specifics that the state has required, the state legislation for SROs. So we're in a position now where we could really dial in what a SRO does, the selection of SRO, and those concerns can be addressed through our partnership versus a call to 911. And I think, like I said, our best foot forward is having those relationships established with students and staff from the onset. In a prevention model and also in a responsive model, we're going to do a much better job when we have some familiarity with the folks here on the screen and then the populations that we all serve.
And Tara, I just wanted to thank you, Captain Rogers. I just wanted to add that we are absolutely in a listening posture. The things that we want to put in place here to have open dialogue with students, with parents, with stakeholders is really something that we want to open up and be informed by. So I really appreciate your comments and we are absolutely taking note of the pieces that you've described. Stan, I don't know.
I'd like to thank both our student representatives for representing your communities really well and courageously too. These are hard discussions to have, and I feel like I appreciate the sincerity of your comments. So I want to thank both of you for that. And then turn it over to directors. I think April Berg had started
Sorry.
in and I interrupted her, sorry.
No worries. It's a long night. So thank you all for this presentation. It's very informative and it's great to see some familiar faces, both from Everett and of course right here in Mill Creek. I've got a couple of questions and then I've got a couple of comments. So a question for you, Peter, just in terms of the cost, and it sounds like we're doing a type of cost sharing with Everett in terms of like we're paying for some officers, they're paying for some officers. Is that the case? And are we doing that with the county as well as the city of Mill Creek?
We do have a cost sharing agreement, particularly in COVID. We needed to sort of reassess what exactly we were going to be paying for and what the other agencies were going to be paying for. Director Berg, the other question you had about, remind me the second half of your question.
So just kind of, I'm just wondering, like, are we cost sharing with Mill Creek as well as Everett?
Oh, that's right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the.
No worries.
We are in COVID closures, yes, with Mill Creek. We have historically paid for both SROs in Mill Creek. We during COVID closure, we are not receiving services at Gateway from the county, so we are not paying for them. But we do. But in an open year, we do pay for that officer. Yes.
So in a normal year, that 600,000, is that just our share? And then so so if I'm spitballing it, then we're looking at like 1.2 million as all in for a program like this.
There are some, I'm not prepared to look at the total cost to add, but yes, 600,000 is our share, correct. Okay. And what that, yes, so that covers Everett and Cascade High Schools, Jackson and Heatherwood and Gateway. And then the city of Everett supports Youth Services Unit Supervisor, North Evergreen and Eisenhower.
Okay, I just am just sticking a pen in it. I'd like to look at those costs depending on what direction we go, just because I think there's some other districts that do a little more of a 50-50 share model, which gets everybody, everybody has skin in the game. And as we're looking at deficits, it might be something worth thinking about because it sounds like there's a lot of passion in the departments around keeping these programs. The other thing is I love the thought of having a panorama question. So I don't know where that is in the discussion process, but I would just kind of say, yes, please, let's ask our 6th through 12th graders what they think. The other piece too is just the data reporting. Now that we are going to have a different lens that we're looking through it, is there a way that we can get that data to us as a board the same way we get like grad rates and other data points that we look at periodically? Like, could we get the incident rate by school? And even if it's however you want to put it together, right? One incident where an SRO was called and things like that, but could we get some kind of visibility on a regular basis of that data?
You bet. Absolutely. So we've built in we actually strengthened some of the data collection process within our student information system to be able to do what the law requires and have just better data, frankly. We have our agreements with the agencies are also to pull some other data on the outcome of the calls as well. So we can get that. The frequency, I would have to investigate how often we're going to be able to do that in any sort of coherent
whatever makes sense. You guys are you guys are the experts. I just want to make sure that we're looking at it regionally so that we understand how the program is doing and how effective it is. The other piece of that is one thing that jumped out in the presentation I didn't know is the SROs coming into classrooms. And this might be kind of a comment / question, talking about, just kind of hanging out in class or not hanging out, but, going to classrooms, going to classroom presentations, having a couple kids in high school, the classes they're in, I can't fathom an SRO just coming in to see a class presentation. So I'm just wondering what the litmus test is for that. And I mean, are you guys hanging out in AP classes, advanced classes, capstone classes, like looking at those presentations, or are we looking at like our Avid kids? And I ask that because it goes towards that perception and that feeling of safety, right? And so I had a kid in a geometry class where there were some really not so awesome discipline issues. They did not talk to the SRO. They did not talk to the CS. They had the assistant football coach come in to de-escalate, which was fine. It was actually a very good way to do that. It would have been a whole different conversation with the SRO, those kids were not Black and brown kids. And so I think that those parents, if those kids had come home saying, oh, an SRO had been in our class talking to us about discipline or watching our geometry presentation, I think those parents would have been like, whoa, wait, what happened? Instead, they had the assistant football coach play a security role. So I'm just wondering what's the litmus test for you guys going into to kind of watch these presentations?
I don't know that we're necessarily going in to watch the presentations. A lot of times they're invited. They have relationships with the teachers and the counselors. And so they might initiate that and come to one of the SROs and say, hey, you know, we got this horrible problem with Instagram or something. Can you come in and give a demonstration on you know, internet safety or something to that effect?
So they're giving a presentation.
Exactly.
Giving a presentation and likely just on a pragmatic level. Some of this is in CTE courses. Some of it is when they're exploring careers, or depending on the content, as Jeff mentioned, health classes, if they're exploring drug, alcohol, tobacco issues.
Depending on what they're doing. And I guess this gets to my last comment, and then I'll let my other directors jump in. And I mentioned this on our last forum that wasn't recorded. There's a difference in policing across our district, and that's where I really have some heartburn. And the example I use, and I'll use it again, is that we have an issue here, you know, pre-COVID in normal times at Heatherwood. And I think Sergeant White knows the issue I'm going to talk about, which is the mass of humanity on Fridays that comes from Heatherwood down to our town center. And we're talking hundreds of students. It is a problem. It's a problem the school knows about, and it's a problem the business owners know about, because the kids wreak absolute havoc. The way it's dealt with is much different if those kids were in the north end of our district. You would never have 200 students walking from Everett into businesses and creating havoc on the regular basis. You can literally set your clock by it. And nothing being done. And so my problem and my question and my inquisitiveness goes to, how are we policing across our district? What are we doing differently in our south end versus our north end? And the grace is the kids will be kids on the south end. That same grace is not given to our youth and gang prevention, et cetera, on our north end. And I see it as a parent, I see it as a citizen. And I think some of our students may have experienced that. And that's where, although you want to be a deterrent and you want to be a face of kind of safety and security, sometimes folks go, wait, if I only was at a different place or in a different region with a different household situation, I might be allowed to just be a kid. And not to say what's going on at Heatherwood is okay, because we've got a lot of problems and there needs to be intervention. But for whatever reason, it's a different story. So I'll just leave it there. I would love equity across the board in how we treat all of our students.
Director Nichols.
So, Dr. Scott, it's great that we had these listening sessions, or this particular listening session. What are the answers to some of these questions? So specifically, what's the cost difference between the SRO program and having more counselors and having other people on staff to provide those services that we're currently asking police to do, which isn't part of their main function? You know, what's the diversity of our different SRO members? And let's see what the other one was. It's all on that last slide there. But you know, like having these listening sessions are great, but we need to answer some of these questions. Are we going to answer them? Do we intend on answering them?
The purpose, I appreciate the question. The purpose of the themes, just culling those themes, were to draw out the kind of the juxtaposition of what several folks in these breakout groups were asking about. I don't know, and I'd have to go back and look to see if they were actually asking for, can we get a cost breakdown between these two? What the kind of the analysis would read, and we could do that. We could do, you know, what this budgeted amount would be translated to these different personnel costs. The purpose of those meetings were to, I think, say, if this is this is potentially a redistribution of those costs. And I think it was more of a open question of whether or not the district has considered that. I think that's really what we were trying to get at there. But it's possible to try to answer those questions in the spirit of pulling out what that question might have been in that particular group.
Well, I mean, it seems a little, to me, it seems a little disingenuous that we're summarizing all these things that parents had concerns over or had questions about, and then we're not reacting to them. We're saying, oh, this is all we learned. This is what we heard. How great is that? That's great, but it's not getting to what the community wants to know. So let's get to what the community wants to know, and let's get those answers. You know, at no point in your next steps of part of this presentation does it say, you know, responding to the community. It has more community engagement, which is great. I think that's all fantastic. But we need to respond to this. It's not just enough to listen. Listening sessions don't do anything without answers and action. So going forward, that's something I would like to see, is some concrete outcomes from these types of sessions. And I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you.
Director Mitchell or Lassane, do either of you have any input or questions?
I have no questions at this time.
I just really want to just tell the students how appreciative I am and how thankful I am for their voices. So thank you so much.
Okay, any further comments?
Oh, Ms. Mason, I have one quick question.
Yeah, please.
So my first question is, how long are the trainings? And then my second question is, who actually does the trainings?
I mean, when you say trainings, are you talking about the training requirements for the SROs?
Yeah.
Jeff, do you want to answer that?
That's a very difficult question to answer in a nutshell. Our training, I can tell you, in all of the law enforcement agencies, we have minimum training that's required every year. So whether you're an Everett officer, a sheriff's deputy, or a Mill Creek officer, it's mandatory training that we have to do every year. But in addition to that, the SROs are required to do additional training. All of our SROs have been through what we call SRO Basic. It's a 40-hour class that helps them identify, to work with students and staff and school rules. And it's put on by the National Association of School Resource Officers, or NASRO. You'll hear that a lot, NASRO. And all of the SROs have gone through that. One thing that happened last year, and Dr. Scott showed a slide there with 12 training topics that was mandated by the state and the new RCW, that all SROs across the state had to go through this training before the start of the school year. So all of the SROs have done that. And that was all originally identified through some of our legislators, but it was directed to us by OSPI. And so in addition to that, all of our SROs, we're always continuing our education and our training. So it's within our department, we're taking, hate bias training, all sorts of training, crisis intervention training, and it just the list goes on and on. Each agency is a little bit different, but as far as the House bill that passed all of those 12 training requirements that you saw, that's across the state, across the board. Did that help?
Yeah, that answered my question.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Okay, not seeing any hand waving. I'm gonna go ahead and thank Sergeant Putain, Sergeant White, and Captain Rogers for being here with us tonight. I just want to also mention, I really appreciate that we are having these conversations. I've been on the board for 7 years now, and I've never had the opportunity to delve into our SRO program at this level of detail, or to actually have interactions with any of our SROs at the board level. And so I really appreciate folks being here tonight and listening. And I also appreciate that the conversation is fairly candid, that people feel that they can express what's happening in our schools, and as parents and as community members, because really at the end of the day, the purpose here, like all the other work that we do, is to get better and to figure out how we can serve our students better. So thank you for being along this journey with us. It's obviously not perfect right now. There's a lot of things in our district that aren't perfect, but it's important that we seek to understand and work to get better. So thank you for your time tonight.
Director Mason, if I could just add, thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity to have this candid conversation. And Jeff and I, Sergeant Pontaine and I were discussing earlier that we are happy to meet with Amina and Tara and any other student as part of this student advisory group, or just informally as well, just to have informal conversations and see where that goes, and how we can how it will inform next steps in eliciting greater voices from the community as well. So thank you.
Okay. You're welcome to go see your families, have some dinner. You've been sitting here a while tonight listening to our board meeting, but you're welcome to stay too if you'd like. Okay, so we are going to move on to unfinished business, and wrapping up the evening, a rather robust and lengthy one. We have approval of our legislative priorities, and I'm guessing that Mr. Jeff Moore is going to present the updated version after a discussion at our last board meeting.
Yes, thank you very much, President Mason. I'm going to share screen so that our audience can view that, and I assume that that is clear and for you. Everybody can see it, correct? Okay, I see some thumbs up. In general, I'll just be brief. For our public, each year we go through a process of developing legislative priorities to meet with our local legislators initially, but more importantly, when we go down to Olympia and visit and inform them and help them make informed decisions about public schools, we like to list our local priorities, engage our students in that process. So at our last meeting on November 24th, we went through a draft of these priorities, and there was a clear desire to simplify them for this year. So I think Dr. Saltzman coined the phrase, the three big rocks, and these are the three big rocks. Since then, we revised these priorities. We sent them out to directors, and in the final stages, along with our legislative liaison, Director Mitchell, we wordsmithed them, and they are presented to you tonight for further comment. We recommend that they be approved, and if there are adjustments, I'll incorporate that into the approved version. So that's my conversation, and there are the priorities for you to review.
Thank you. I'm hoping directors had an opportunity to take a look at this before tonight, to read through those tiny little font lettering down there. Directors, do you have any comments or feedback on the updated version?
I would like to go first, if I may. I like the fact that they're simplified. I really appreciate that. I think they're written very well, and I'm very happy with those. I still believe that our first priority, if they're in priority order, would be to send voters a constitutional amendment on a simple majority for bonds. That should be our utmost concern right now. I know the other two rather are very important, and in this time of COVID and digital learning or remote learning and the funding problems we have, those are very, very vital too. But for me, the constitutional amendment on a simple majority should be number one.
You
That's
know,
all I have to say.
and that's interesting that you say that, because I think I feel very much the same way. And for some reason, because I look over so many of these different legislative priorities, you know, WASA, WASDA, other districts, to see what they're doing. And I feel like the capital always comes at the bottom. Like that's kind of its place. So I actually don't have a strong opinion of where it should actually land on the piece of paper. I'm just happy it's there personally.
Well, I see that too. And that's one of the reasons why I think we should go in there, be first by saying the bonds, a simple majority. It may not be something that might pass foremost, first order of business, but I think in this day and time with our situation, I know the other two will, because every other district in this state is experiencing the same issues as 1 and 2, the top two. But for us, the simple majority for the bond should be at the top of the list.
How do other directors feel about that?
I would actually push back on that a little bit, though it is, you know, it's huge and it is an important issue. The real issue, we wouldn't need bonds if education was fully funded, right, from the state level and from the federal level. So kind of that one that's up there is actually the most important. Just my background in mental health, I would always want to see that second one, the adverse impacts of the pandemic, at the forefront. But hopefully that will pass. But the thing that will continue are these funding shortfalls from both, you know, whether it be from bond or from the state itself. So to me, it's kind of they're all number ones, right? So this is number 1A, number 1B, number 1C. It's hard to make a firm yes or no on which one is the first one.
And Andrew, I agree with you that I appreciate the fact we don't number them, that they are in a list. And the bond, there is discussion this session on this, that I'm going to call on Friday for it. And then, I really think that for the financial health of our district, number 1 and 2 really are essential. I just have a question, 2 questions, and then 1 statement. I'm going to start with my statement because Kathy, because our roles changed tonight and because this will be presented several weeks, if you can update our roles. Yeah. And then Jeff, if you can go down a little bit to your bottom statement, economic recovers addressed as the economy recovers from the pandemic, special education prototypical model SEB. Should there be an and in there? And are these inclusive or exclusive? Like, are these for example, or it's just, I'm not quite sure if those are the only 3 things we need, or if these are 3 parts of things we need.
I would say they are 3 parts. They are an example, and
Yeah,
we
so
can certainly
somehow
add that.
just clarify that instead of this is it looks like an inclusive list and bad grammar because it's a list. And then the second thing is, and I appreciate the shortening and adding that social emotional, and I hope that somebody who's a better wordsmith than me, because is the sentence of invest in the social emotional needs of students that have been worsened by the pandemic. And yes, this whole section is addressing adverse impacts of the pandemic, but the fact too that we've been asking for increased resources for the total social emotional needs of our students, so more counselors, social workers, the like, outside of the pandemic. And so I'm wondering how to say that it's been accentuated by the pandemic, but it needs to be there regardless of the pandemic.
I could change the word to heightened by the pandemic.
Exacerbated.
Exacerbated is a word that we did have in there that, if
I
you would like that.
May I
because it's like
invest
we
in the
need
ongoing
help. What was that, Kathy? Sorry.
I would suggest invest in the ongoing social emotional needs of students.
that have been exacerbated by the pandemic?
Not exacerbated. You can't use that word. People don't know how to spell it.
Okay, but worsened, it's something that we need a continuous investment, but it's impacted greatly because of the pandemic.
Right. So if you say the ongoing needs, then it indicates that it isn't just starting now because of the pandemic.
Okay, something that just shows urgent as well as continuous. Something. And but I do appreciate Jeff just taking out so many of the words to make it very clear that those blue statements are absolute wants, with the little words about what the details are. So Kathy, great job in formatting this.
Well,
Any
thank you.
additional comments?
I think I need to know the final element is the batting order going to remain the same or be changed?
I think the batting order should stay the same because it's it's not a priority order. And the bond really is long-term, and those act early, that is short-term need. That is, we need them to pass stuff in February 2nd.
Okay.
I can live with that.
I appreciate you, Pam. I do.
I meant to mention up
I can
front.
live with that. I understand. I was on mute, but I could live with that.
So I understand, and I intended to say that we have new officers. We'll correct that. We're going to add the word ongoing, and we're going to retain the existing order. And thank you for your input in this process.
Thank you.
Okay, with no further conversation, I would like to call for a motion to approve our legislative priorities with the discussed amendments.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the legislative priorities with the additions or changes that we discussed. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will go ahead and move to the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Are there any abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay. I believe we have our approved legislative priorities. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Well, that brings us moving on to new business. And tonight we have no new business items, which takes us to section 16.0 of our agenda, which is upcoming agenda items. And Dr. Salzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the December 8th regular meeting, the board will discuss the following: math performance report, which will be very important to hear for our public and for all of us, the math performance report. Strategic plan refresh update. The board annual regular meeting schedule for 21-22 first reading. Recognition item, first quarter financial report and November financial report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Section 17 of the agenda is executive session and closed session, and tonight we do not have either. So that takes us to 18, which is adjournment. And I would like to hit my gavel. I don't have my gavel. That concludes the business to come before the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors on December 8th. This meeting is adjourned. And I'm going to quickly squeeze in before everyone starts signing off. I want to say I hope everyone has a happy holiday, because there's a chance I won't get to see any of you again, even though it's sort of early December. And I hope you all have just a really wonderful, heartfelt holiday despite the craziness that's going on in our world. And sometimes small is better. It really does simplify things a little bit. But I hope you find some joy in whatever it is that you're able to do during the break. And Dr. Salzman's going to say, and rest and relax.
Rest, relax, and be safe and be well, everybody.
Would anyone else?
Don't check your email.
Director, I want to give them an
Yes.
opportunity. Just to
Recharge, and enjoy your families. They are your best gift.
Yeah. Thank
Stay
you all for
safe.
sticking in here over a really long meeting. Everyone knows I'm not a fan of big, long meetings, but sometimes there's just a lot of information and a lot of topics that do need covering. So I appreciate you all hanging in there.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Holidays.
Bye-bye.